Oh, it would help if I put myself in the fucking thing here. Oh, there I am. All right. I'm not wearing my headphones, so can you guys hear me? Put a number one in the chat if you can hear my voice. I'll wait to see if. Oh, I gotta scroll down to the bottom to see if I'm getting the number one. If you can hear me. All right. Jesus, there's like 51s at once. All right, welcome to the show. I apologize for not being on last night, but I had to go to Brooklyn for a dinner meeting where what we're going to talk about tonight was the topic of conversation. And you guys might have to forgive me. I might have to put my headphones on because I am not used to. Oh my God, that's much better. At least I can fucking hear I can hear what I'm saying, so I'm not distorted. Anyway, I'm going to go through the chat really quick. But first, before we do that, we are going to be having a guest on. I think he's coming on like close to 9, or he can come on whenever he wants. It's up to him. But I wanted to preface sort of what we're going to be talking about tonight. But I'm going to go through the chat first. Miss Can't Be Wrong, how are you? Chop Money, how are you? Bambi, Donald Gravesend, Terrell, Severio, how are you? How's Canada? Michael Thompson, Frank, how are you? Pat, how are you? Vicious Artwork, What's Shaken? Mr. Gorky, Knox, uh, Brian, how are you? D. Solsky or Solsky, depending on how you pronounce it. Carlos, What's Shaken? Carlos, your stuff is being put in the mail tomorrow. So anybody that won the contest, everything's being put in the mail tomorrow. So it should be there in 4 or 5 days. If it's not, reach out to me and I will locate it. But most of you will get a tracking number. So I don't want you guys to think that, I'm leaving you in the lurch. Johnny, how are you? Stacy, how are you? All right, let me go down here. Alex D, I did get your email. I did, and I just haven't responded yet. Harry Anderson, Donald Pittman, how are you? Let me scroll down. Okay, Maz Boss, how you doing, pal? How you doing? All right, let me go by, say a couple of things here. Bear Pushy with Chicken. Now, there is another content creator on, so I'm not expecting a huge crew tonight, but I think what we're going to talk about is very, very, very important. Tommy Stiggs, What's Shaken, North Jersey in the house, Real Deal, What's Shaken. Yes, I remember who you are. Real Deal. Nice gentleman you are. Joey Jr., how are you? All right, so Furbo, Bobby Lee, I'm seeing a lot of names in here. Oh, Colleen, I haven't seen you in years. Yes, I know. I remember you. You're from Rhode Island. Of course I remember you. Wow. Talk about wow. I'm glad to see you in here. Although I'm not going to be surprised because I did see you in Angel's chat. So I knew you were back. All right. So for those of you that are unfamiliar, just really quickly, I don't dump nobody. Excuse me. For those that are familiar with the video I put out the other day, just about content creators inventing things and not being sort of accurate with what they're saying. It's been a conversation that's needed to happen for a long time. And at some point, there was sort of an agreement that a bunch of us were going to sit down and talk about this. It didn't work for whatever reason. I'm not going to get into all of that. But earlier today, I was discussing things with another content creator, Tom La Vecchia, very briefly. And more or less, he had said, we should really get together and have this conversation. It's an important conversation to have. So I said, well, I'm doing a live tonight. Why don't you just come on and we'll talk about it there? Now, if anybody thinks it's going to be a bashing fest, I'm going to tell you it's not going to be, but I cannot promise I'm going to behave. So I'm just going to be honest up front. Then, once Tom gets here and we start talking, we'll talk for a little bit, and then we'll allow anybody who wants to come on to voice their opinion is welcome to. People who have wrenches in the chat, do me a solid and throw people off if they're even going to be nasty to anybody. I'm not going to deal with it tonight. North Providence. All right. I got you. So I'm going to drop the link in the chat for Tom. Hopefully he's coming on. If not, then this might end up the reverse of what I wanted it to be. Hopefully he is okay. If I'm not going to tell you who sent it. I just got a text. I normally turn my phone off, but pink is my color. That's great. I can see the memes now. Pink is his color. Tommy, you want to be a wrench? I'll take care of that. I'll take care of that later on tonight, Tommy. I can't do it right now because I have to flip to another thing. Hopefully, let me just let me send a text to Tom to see if he is coming on. Because if he's not, then that's going to change what we're going to do. Where is I don't have the guy's number. Where the hell? Nope, that's my phone number. I don't know. Hold on one second, guys. Hold on. Oh, this is not how I should be doing things. Roger that. Oh God, I cannot find this email. Hold on one second, guys. I told him 9:00, so that would be on. It's going to be on me if. Let's see. He dropped it. I just don't know where. I'm no good at these email things. Okay, hold on. I got it now. 1 second. I'll off a knob of this fucking thing. Okay, let me do this really quick. All right. Sent the text, so we'll see what happens. Drop the link in the chat. So I wanted to preface what we're going to talk about tonight because I think that there's a wide gap between content and other stuff. MobTube is its own kind of thing over here. Oh wow, that's creepy. And I'm not a part of MobTube. I do the mob genre. MobTube is sort of a subdivision of all of this. But you know, there's a wide gap in between people who are doing this content and people who aren't. Tom is coming in, by the way. Sorry, I'm just distracted by that. The link is in the chat, Tom. So we're going to talk about that tonight. But there's one thing I wanted to kind of bring up. Really in principle. There are three types of people that are in the mob genre. You have frauds, you have source liars, and then you have the pros. The pros are the people that use paperwork, do research, and bring you the facts, and then they let you decide what you want to sort of believe. Source liars are people that say they have sources on the street and they don't because they don't know anybody. And I think we all know who those people are. And then you have the frauds, the Raymundis of the world who were never anybody in the life and just sort of want to pretend that they were somebody. And I think that for the sake of conversation, Tom, operates a show very differently than I do. And so I wanted to bring him on because he has a different way he does things. And I think having the conversation is important. And if anybody gets offended by it, well, that's just your fucking problem. I'm just going to be honest with you. That's your problem because the truth does hurt. And I stand by, everything that I say. So here's Tom. I see you back there. Just give me a second. So the one thing we're going to do is we're going to have this conversation, and please allow us to have a conversation for about 20 minutes. And then if you guys want to jump on and offer your opinion, absolutely. If you're asking questions constantly in the chat, I'm probably not going to get to them because I really want to focus on this conversation I'm going to have with Tom. But you guys are certainly welcome to come on like at 9:00, 9:15. And join in the conversation because ultimately what I think and what Tom may think really is irrelevant because you guys are the ones that are paying for our content. And that's just sort of where I stand by it. I have a couple of banners I'm going to post while we talk and stuff like that, but we're going to get right into it.
Hey man, how are you?
I'm good. I hate wearing these fucking headphones, but I feel like when I'm talking to the mic and I can't hear myself, it's a very weird thing. Very weird. How are you?
I'm well, man. Thanks for having me on.
Well, do me a solid. Tell everybody who you are in case they don't know you.
Yeah. So my name's Tom La Vecchia. I am the host of now it's called, well, my old name is the new name, New Theory Podcast. It's a podcast that I started back in 2016. How I kind of got involved with the mob space and genre was I had just notable people to this day. I just want to talk to people that I'm interested in talking to. Kind of got involved with some of the mob early on stuff earlier on. Hey, Miss, can't be wrong. Hope you're well. And I saw that at that time the mob content was doing a lot better than maybe some of the business people or even more famous people that I was interviewing. So I kind of got into the genre that way. I guess I'm probably best known, and we could chat about this with MTR, where I hooked up with John Panisi. I interviewed him 9 episodes. Him and I guess, got along. We had about 100 show run. Had a little bit of a rug pull there. Then went on my own for a while, and then now back to New Theory. I am still doing some mob content, but it's not my focus online, even though that's my heritage, where I'm known for. And I'll talk to MTR a little bit as to why.
So the big thing, and you and I have talked about this sort of, I don't want to say behind the scenes because that makes it sound shady, but it really the mob genre. I mean, it's we've always stated it's oversaturated, and I don't really necessarily want to get into that. But I think the big facet I want to talk about is just there seems to be a wide gap between people who are really good at this and people who are just absolutely awful at this.
Yeah. So oh, sorry, I don't know if that was
no. Go ahead.
So that's when so part of the reason why I decided to step away. One, life got in the way. I have 4 kids. I have 2 businesses. I have a small media site that I run. So I'm pretty busy, right? So kind of it competes. Everybody knows this. Yeah, when you have any opportunity, it kind of competes with your time. Then it's like, well, if I put time over here, which I did, I took a little bit of time away from the podcast, and my family life and my business life got better. So now I'm trying to find out where this fits in. So as I stepped away for about 12 weeks, I came back, and I categorically agree with you. And I'm not necessarily, hey Johnny, I'm not necessarily saying, and we can unpack the ex mobsters versus content creators, but macro level, there are probably 3 to 5 shows that maybe get it, and then the rest that just don't, and that fall off is profound. So
Yeah.
I kind of want to echo what you're saying there. That the cream always rises to the top, and the crap goes to the bottom. And I think in this space, not only did I predict this demise a little while back,
You
I
did.
see it firsthand because I just see just lack of good content.
Well, one of the things that I always look at is merit versus money.
Yeah.
And if I mean, listen, I understand we're all trying to make money, but if that is totally your bottom line, then you don't have much merit because, and it, without going into a huge dissertation on it, I have a huge issue with that fact versus opinion. Okay. I can have an opinion. You know what my opinion on informants are. You have your own opinion, but I don't hold that against you. That's your choice. Okay. But I've also have a huge issue with people who continuously platform them and they know they're being lied to and then say nothing. And and I understand why. I understand why, but it really goes to a foundation of the thing that I think that really gets under my skin that I think people just don't understand is there are some people out here who just invent history. They change history, they change the narrative, or they make up something salacious like a mob boss has CIA connections when in reality that's A, not true, and B, like when did this genre become the let's rat on everybody genre? I don't or tell tall tales. I don't understand.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to unpack in your last statement, but I want to bucket maybe 2, 3 quick points. The first is and I say this all the time, and I've been fairly consistent with this. I am not a journalist. I never claimed to be a journalist.
Right.
I'm a podcaster. I do interviews. I do some solo content, and I just like to talk to people that I find interesting. However, I will say this: whenever, for example, earlier on, and a lot of people really don't know this, and you and I don't know if I really discussed this. When Johnny Aylett used to come on the show earlier on, I would reach out, or Angel would reach out to me, probably very unhappy, or I'd reach out to her and say, "Hey, listen, like, I don't know who to reach on the Gotti camp. You generally, as a decent journalist, if somebody says A about somebody, you generally go to them and say, hey, by the way, What do you think, right? Or give me a quote or something. So Angel, respectfully declined, especially at the time. Her brother's not going to come on. My show is way too small. He doesn't do a lot of media. So I have a little known show that I can send to anybody. I actually had Chris Casparosa come on as a counterbalance to one of Johnny Alight's shows.
Right.
Secondly, when I had John on a little bit more, I kind of took a break from him and put on a little bit more. And I know, I guess his name's out there now, but his stage name was Common Sense. He came on and I gave him a 2.5 hour forum. He's kind of like you in a sense where he's more of a fact based guy, whether you like him or not.
Right.
He had a lot of great facts that he wanted to dispute against John Aligh. So what I do is I may, and I'm fully admit this, that I may have put people on the show that I maybe miscalculated or might have made some errors or maybe gave too much credence to certain situations. However, I always try to um, um, give the opportunity that if somebody's mentioned or if MTR is mentioned or somebody's mentioned, I would go ahead and say, hey, do you want to respond? I have That's the one thing about me. I believe in free speech and I have an open forum. That's people that know me, Carlos, and those are in the chat that know
Yeah.
me. I'm brutally about free speech. It's just that some people it's it's a deal breaker. Oh, you had so and so on, you platform informants. I don't want you on. I like discourse. I like to have active discourse.
Right.
You and I are going to have a cigar in the house in New Jersey, and we
Right.
probably disagree on 45% of things. But then
Right.
5% will have a common ground. We'll have a
Right.
cigar together, and I will learn from you, and you may, God forbid, learn from me. So I take kind of a different stance on that, and that's kind of why I'm coming back out because I want to explain myself a little bit. I don't punch back a lot because I don't have a lot of time, and number two, I like to punch up, not down. And a lot of people
Right.
that come at you kind of nibble at your heels. The second part is of what you said really quick is yeah, so there's opinion based stuff and fact based, right?
Right.
And a lot of people are opinion based and their platforms are growing. So I
Right.
believe you kind of said earlier, we have a responsibility to the viewers,
Right.
especially if they're paying us. Remember, they may not give a donation, but they're paying an AdSense, or
Right.
more importantly, they're paying with their attention,
Right.
right? So Jeff knows this. If he ever wants to sell his show, first person going to say is, "How many active users do you have?" And
Right.
they're going to buy off of it. Not even the revenue. They want to get to his users because of his value. So whenever there's a user of any kind, we owe them the responsibility to provide good quality content. And I do believe in, and I agree with you that some people are just making a lot of stuff up nowadays. And I'm not saying individually. I'm saying in
Right.
general, there's a lot of people.
Collectively. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's I guess it comes back to like this right here. Do mob content creators have a responsibility to their audience to be transparent about where they're getting their information from?
Yes, but it's tricky because um, so I'll be the first. I'll be the first to say I do not source information directly from the street. I'm like, I don't want to. I just don't
I
want to,
trust
right?
me. I know how you feel.
Yeah. And I live in New Jersey. The boss of the decaps, I could probably throw a stone and hit his house. I go to restaurants in my old town. I just don't need the smoke,
I think when I say transparent about their information, I don't mean like Johnny one knuckle on the corner told me. I
Yeah,
just mean when you come out with something that's so salacious and so unbelievable, show the government the paperwork that leads
yeah,
you to come up with what you're
yeah,
saying. And this is why I'm going to say it,
yeah,
because there are people that are saying very reckless things. And I don't care what anybody says. You can think this isn't 1940, but I'm going to tell you the secret to it is it's been my sort of experience. Street guys don't give a shit about the truth. What they
yeah.
have issues with is somebody who lies
Correct.
and
Yeah,
knows they're doing it when they're doing it.
yeah,
And something like, if we were talking about 1960 and the CIA and Sam Giancana, I could pull up 3,000 pages
correct.
of information from the government that could show you at least that's where I'm getting it from.
Right.
But I think when you're reckless, naming active people and then making wild fucking claims about the CIA, like, and you're not going unchecked,
Yeah.
at what point are you being dishonest to your audience?
Yeah. So number one, the unequivocal answer to your question there is yes. You need to be transparent. Like I said, there are two kind of sides of the coin. One is when you have a reputable source, and this goes because I do have journal. I have a small media company, and I have journalists that work for me. right? That's why I don't get involved in journalism because I'll screw it up.
Right.
But,
Right.
they're expected to do one of two things: either A, cite their sources in the body or a link, a hyperlink, as you know,
Right.
or if it's maybe a, let's say, an unnamed source that you can't give because
Right.
you get sources once in a
Right.
while. You could say, "Hey, I have an unnamed source. I can't disclose who it is because of trust." But then the truth of the matter is, you need to build up your credibility to be
Right.
able to have those kind of contacts. Like if you said to me, "Hey, I have a real reliable source that I feel that that the Colombo family is merging into the Lucchese's because they're just too small in numbers." If you
Right.
said that, I'd believe it. You earned that trust, right? But if
Right.
others said that, I would just think it's bullshit. So A, you need to increase the credibility of your brand and who you are. But number two, if you can't cite the source, at least be credible with other things that you do. And that's what it comes down to, credibility.
Right. And the reason why I bring that up is I have a couple of points, and I know somebody very well who knows somebody very well. Okay.
So,
His whole entire life, he's worked on Mulberry Street. I'm sure he knows people, but this is a guy who never broke a law in his life, never done nothing. But yet a content creator took it upon himself to tell everybody this guy was a fucking gangster. And I don't which leads me to this next point. In another instance,
wait,
this
does
creator,
this guy eat cannolis?
yeah, yeah. In another instant, this creator put men on murders they didn't even do, were never involved with, that others got convicted for. And at some point, you have to hold people accountable for mistruths, and
Yeah.
it leads to sort of this: is do other content creators like me or you have a right to amend things that other content creators say that are obvious lies?
Yeah, and that's where and take this as a compliment. You're not a guy that you easily get. You have like kind of a different type of sense of humor. You
Right.
have
Yeah.
different
Sure.
angles. You have different ideas. Sometimes you're very like straight, direct, and other times you're somewhat Machiavellian. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. But I kind of didn't get you probably till about a year and a half, a year ago. And here's what I mean by that. I kind of felt you were a little harsh and critical of other people because I kind of said to myself, I'm like, wow, this guy was the original guy. Other people came to space, it expanded. Maybe he's pissed, maybe he feels some
Right.
people past and that kind. That was my initial knee jerk reaction. But as I kind of deep dived into your content and I got to speak to you directly, that conversation we had that one time was a great conversation. Is no, you need to keep this genre in check. Otherwise, you need people like you because otherwise it'll go awry. So there is a way to do it. The answer is yes, and there's a
Right.
way to do it. But one of the challenges in the space is there's a whole swath of people that just go after you, go after your family, and
Right.
that kind of some people throw the baby out with the bathwater. But the
Yep.
truth of the matter is, we do need people like you, and we do need people to call bullshit on things that aren't right.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Usually, like, and I agree with what you said, because most of the time when I meet people, they're already predisposed to want to fight because they
Yeah,
don't like me. They think I got a big mouth or whatever,
yeah,
but they fail to understand how I grew up, where I came from, who I'm friends with, who I know. And so I've always said, when there's an indictment about people that I know and I know what they're capable of and what they're not, I'm going to defend them
yeah,
till I'm blue in the face, because I see
yeah,
it on both sides of the fence. I see the courthouse version and the
yeah,
law enforcement and them. And when I try to approach people, I'm usually very nice through an
yeah,
email like, hey, listen, what you said wasn't really nice. It's
yeah.
not really true. And I get this immediate response of, you don't know anybody. I've got more subs than you. And it's just kind of like, at that point, what's the point in arguing? You
Well,
know?
that's a great point, and it's funny. I watched your show yesterday. So separate when again, Panisian and I just spent 2 years ago, so it's been a while, right?
Right.
Got to kind of wash out a little bit. I generally, and I don't as kind of a rule, I don't like to talk about current people. I don't talk about current people. If a guest talks about a current person or situation, I kind of veer it off. I've had without getting too much into detail, I never got any threats or anything. I did have the FBI call me once or twice. That happens. But and again, I don't think I was in danger. I think I was just mentioned, and they had some duty to let me know and had some questions for me. But I had a situation where a person on the show talked about an alleged family member of a non-New York mob boss, and they're still kind of around. And he got a request to take the show down, and I took it down. I'm not, although I'm a freedom of speech guy, and I'll fight to death for my right to speak freely as you speak freely. I'm also not going to get this guy in trouble for a few thousand views. So the short answer is yes, you have if you're going to go on air and you are going to say something, you have the exposure to be criticized by people that have the right to criticize you, right? And
Right.
that's you and other people.
Right.
The second part of it is we need that because there were times that I did shows that I had people on and they made certain claims, and I found out later they were bogus. So I need people like you to say, "Hey, you know what, Tom? I know you had that guy on. I know you're friendly with him. You might have had a cigar with him, but he's full of shit. Here is why." One of the things you have over a lot of these people is you have your Pacer subscription. You
Right.
read this stuff. You deep dive this stuff. Like Lisa Babick. I like. I haven't spoken to her. I don't know what she's doing, but I always kind of liked her situation. RJ, I know he's hooked up with an informant. Some people may criticize him for that, but I think RJ is a professional. So although we look at it different ways, there are certain people that deep dive into the content and into the realness of it. And the truth of the matter is, you have to go by the facts, and you've done a good job at
Well, I told RJ if I ever retire, he can have my show. He's the one guy I trust with it. And listen, he does what he does. He has his own niche in what
Correct,
he's
correct,
doing. And
correct.
and he knows how I feel about it, but I would not ever persecute him for that. That's his choice, that's his
Yeah,
decision. But we're also two different people. We grew up two different kind of ways. But what I don't like is some of the fraud, the fraud stuff that goes, or people are platforming all of these, but that's
yeah,
that's sort of their thing. But it comes back to, I get a little tired of and I said this earlier, and you may disagree with me, and this is a little bit harsh, but I said there's three types of people that are in this genre. There's the frauds, there's the
yeah,
source liars, and then there's the pros that do their research.
yeah,
And the ones that drive me the most fucking crazy are the source liars, because those are the ones say, well, I know somebody and I heard through so and so. But it's funny because every once in a while I'll be on Google because somebody will say, "Hey, I saw this hierarchy chart or whatever," and I look at it and I start laughing. There's somebody sent me one, and Chris Gorky, if he's in the chat, will have to remind me. But they put like Joe Bonanno on a hierarchy chart of a totally different family, and
yeah,
it's like, I just think that there is a huge leap between, I think, what you, me, and RJ does versus a lot of other people. And I don't want to appear to be too tough on anybody, but you know, I find it personally, I what's the word I'm looking for? I'm trying not to sound like a jerk off here.
no, no,
When
this good point.
when people talk about people that I know
Yeah,
very well, okay, and they make up these crazy stories how they had breakfast with them, and they make up all this ludicrous shit. I just kind of say to myself, why don't you stop? Because Tom, who is not going to make you
yeah,
a better podcaster, right? You
correct.
either got it or you don't. Who
Yeah,
I know doesn't define me. It doesn't make me a tough guy. I'm still
yeah,
me.
yeah.
You
Well,
know?
I talk about this openly that I my first cousin married Sammy's niece. My and it sucks, but I was at the
Oh, I
wedding.
didn't know that. Now you're in trouble, Tom.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I have friends with Karen, admittedly, and she's been good. She's been good to me. She's always been supportive. I'm supportive. I'm very close friends with Ramona Rizzo. Very close friends with Ramona. But also my cousin married John Riggy's granddaughter, and I literally was like sad because he couldn't go to the wedding, and they had to like hear him over the loudspeaker to wish her well. And in any Italian family or any family, to miss your granddaughter's wedding 'cause you're incarcerated, really
Right.
sucks, right? So not, and this isn't a flex, it's the opposite. What I'm getting at is my mother came from Italy, and as a responsible Italian parent, annexed us from that life. Like we would not go to if there was, just really really a point to keep me and our family away from people like that. There were bad people. So that's where, unfortunately, for her, because she kind of kept me away from it. And when you saw Zio at this and who here or there growing up, I tend to want to learn more about it. So what did I do? I got academic about it and probably read over 150 books, and spoke with probably. And I know like you're probably not going to like this, but I believe I had the most inducted members on my show. I think more than PPD, more than Vlad. So I'm just fascinated with certain parts. Can I lobby a question back to you if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So how and again, I'm going to preface this and then we'll unpack it. So I had a John Dickey on, Anna
Right.
Sergi, Nicasso, Gleason. So I'm not like just the mob hump that they call me, right? But I also had Sammy on, I had
Right.
Denise on, I had Luisi and Ital, right? So what I'm trying to do is I look at my show's a little different, where I look at the business angle of things and try to
Sure.
have people use it for their careers and entrepreneur and that kind of stuff. People don't believe that, but I see it every time. I like to look at the mob and look at their model and learn how to run my business better from it
Right.
by the
Sure. Of
mistakes and
course.
the successes. So my question is, if we're going to exclude informants, right? How do we get that really good insider knowledge? So I
You're
want
not
to get
going. You're not going to. You're
okay.
not going to. And that's one thing I've always said. It's not for me,
Okay, good.
but I can understand why other people do it. I mean, not everybody has the acumen I do. Not
Yeah,
anybody has the background I do. So I could talk about other things and still be entertaining without having to do that.
got it.
So I don't blame other people that do that, because
Just find
if you
yourself.
really think about it, and I've been honest about this,
Yeah,
I've been around a decade. I could have had every single one of these guys on, every single one of them, right? But I made a choice not to, because of friendships, because of how I grew up. And I didn't, I made my mistakes like everybody else. So I'm not trying to be the hypocrite here. But I think at the same time, where my value comes in, and I think RJ told me this once, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, but he said, the mob never had a guy defend them. You're the
yeah,
first and you'll be the last. And that's sort of my thing. I like to take it from a street perspective, and I like to take it to an indictment perspective and
yeah,
knock holes where I can. I mean, I can't tell you how many indictments people have brought me, people that I know through other people that got indicted, says, do me a favor, read through this and try to blow holes through it and
yeah,
send it back to my lawyer. And that's what I do, because
yeah,
I think outside the box. Now, does that mean everybody's innocent? No,
yeah,
absolutely not. I mean, I'm not going to play that card, but I just think that there is, I think informants are much more tolerated today than they ever have been. And I think with the oversaturation of the genre, it's the genre to me has become a joke, an
yeah.
absolute joke,
I agree.
because
I agree.
you have people that are going to these content creator sites, and I'm not picking on any one particular person, but they go there and just the information is so bad and awful, and you can see people in the chat saying this is awful, like it's not even accurate, but yet for some reason that, and I think what really pisses me off is it distorts history, and they
Yeah,
don't seem to give a shit.
yeah.
And that to me is not being like a genre person. It's just kind of Jerry Springer type of shit.
Let me volley a next question, and this is something I always wanted to ask you, and this may be an easy no. Is there a spectrum, all the way to the left, bad, 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 Sammy, respectfully, Mikey Scars put a lot of people away, or at least 80 people indirectly, directly, and you kind of have this spectrum all the way maybe to Francis, right? And then you kind of want to say, where does respectfully a Paul Tanzo lie, where he didn't inform but he's on here? So like where do you land on this? Is there a spectrum with informants, and then also maybe guys that are on that didn't directly inform?
So I always, my Cugino always says the same thing to me. He goes, you notice they always find God the minute they get arrested. You notice they always talk after they get arrested. Nobody gets up on a Sunday, Tom, and says, you know what? I've led a horrible life. Let me
Yeah,
go confess my sins to the police and not mention a soul.
yeah,
The mere fact, just my opinion aside,
yeah,
the mere fact that none of these men had any scruples, they were all good to sit in the car to rob the bank to blow the broad's head off,
yeah,
but none of them want to do a day in jail. And
yeah,
so, from my perspective, if somebody just said, you know what, I'm going to throw myself to the slaughter, I'm a scumbag, I want to change, and they didn't tell on 30 people at the same time, I wouldn't say a word.
yeah.
But the second that you tell on somebody else because of the penalties, to me, that just makes you a fucking coward.
So there's no. I so what I gather for the first part
There's
question
no
is
hierarchy of ratting.
no
They're all
spectrum.
rats.
Okay, the next question is where does, and I'm just giving him as an example. To, I
Sure.
can't think of Paul Tanza, who I always liked, had him on the show. Didn't inform, but maybe and doesn't even talk about people, but is on and has some fun, and it's kind of a shtick, if you will. Where do you land on those type of guys?
I go on this merit. If this was something you're brought up in, what's the first rule you're taught?
Not to talk about it. Yeah.
But
Okay.
Joe, who was it? It was Harry Riccobene when he was ratting out everybody in South Philadelphia. The first thing he said was, "Well, Joe Valachi told everybody we existed, so there's no problem if I do it." And that's kind of my thing. And granted, and I will give people this because the first thing they're going to say against me, Thomas, well, you're talking about it, but I'm not in it.
Yeah. Correct.
If I swore an oath to something, believe me, you wouldn't see me.
Well, okay, so I have a new question that popped in my head just now. Because we're in this genre, do you think a lot of people conflate who they are and what they do because of that? Meaning, get tough, threaten, threaten women, act a certain way.
Are you talking about informants?
No, even creators too. It just seems
Oh,
like they get an inflection in their voice. They curse a little bit more than they need to, and they yell a little bit more than they. It just
yeah,
seems
sure. I
both.
think everybody's a character, Tom.
Yeah.
I mean, am I this loud and abrasive in person? Only if you piss me off.
Yeah, but
But
what I'm getting at is some people, because they think they're in the mob genre, they almost sometimes think they're in the mob.
well, yeah. Well, if you look at some people that have done this, they wear the tracksuit, they wear that kind of deal, and they do their shows. And I always laugh because that's a fucking costume.
Yeah.
Everybody I know wears jeans and a t-shirt and a fucking football jacket. Nobody dresses like that. Look at Joey Massino. You see him in a tracksuit? Come on.
Yeah. Oh, that's so. Another thing, I know it's your show. I don't mean to, but you're jogging some good thoughts in my mind. So what needs to happen? Does it need to be a slow burn where a lot of these creators realize they're not going to make money and go off to the sunset? Does it need to be like an immediate apocalypse where there needs to be maybe a tightening of the community where certain people are shunned? Something's got to happen because it's not a community, right? It's not,
No.
and the way it's structured, it's designed for failure, and again, getting more and more and more saturated.
Yeah.
So let's just say you were the president of the mob genre on all sides of it, mind you. Can this be saved, and if so, how?
Unfortunately, yeah, it can, but you're gonna have to exclude a lot of people.
Yeah,
And that's not a personal thing. It's just it sounds like an egotistical thing coming from me because I feel like if you're not going to do research and paperwork,
yeah,
what the fuck are you doing? Like I can pick up a book and I can regurgitate every story I've ever read, but what's really funny, there's a book by Tony DiStefano, Gotti's
yeah.
Boys.
I
There's
agree.
about a couple of chapters in there that are pretty accurate. Then it
Yeah,
gets real weird.
yeah,
And then you read the Locasio documents, the Gotti documents, the Ruggiero documents, and none of that adds up to what's said in the book. And it makes you go, well, what the fuck was this guy doing his research on? And so that's the thing. I think unless you, and I hate to say you got to call people out, but if you don't put people to the flames and not to ruin their credibility, but if people can't see that they're lying, then what are you doing?
Did you get around to writing a book yet? If you have, I'll order it immediately. But did you get
Yeah,
around?
it's done. It's done. I'm when they send you the proofs and
Yeah,
you have to go through everything and it's like my lawyer was having a field day with me. He's like, "Are you sure you want to?" And I said, "It's signed off on by." That's what people don't understand. Like for me to even talk about certain things, I have to make phone calls. Like, "Is this okay? Is that okay?" "Yeah, yeah, yeah, sure, go ahead."
yeah.
But yeah, it should be out. I'm hoping like December, January.
Oh
And
wow, well,
it's gonna set some shit on fire because I think people are gonna go a little crazy, but it's a part history, part everything. So
so you bring a good point. One, I'm going to support you and promote it, but number two, and I'll be one of the earlier buyers of the book. But one of the critical things though is when you write a book, you obviously want it to sell, right? And you shouldn't
of
lie.
course,
I'm not saying
of course.
anybody should lie, but what happens is, and I remember this from one of my lawyers, is puffery. People tend to maybe exaggerate things for a dramatic effect, right?
Right.
Tony DeStefano, who I interviewed, I'm a huge fan of. I love this book on Lufthansa heist. I've read a few of his other books. Huge fan of his. When I talked to him, fell even more in love as terms of his work. But what happens, I think, is you rely on as a writer. Like these are good guys, right? DeStefano, Gleason wrote his book.
Right.
Sullivan, Rob. I mean, a lot of these guys, and it's funny, just because somebody's an Italian, even Mike Vecchione, who was a former prosecutor, just because somebody's an Italian doesn't mean they have like insight or a street guy. These are like well-educated men, that
Right.
like were the farthest from the street, grew up in like white glove houses. So my point being is, I think they tend to embellish a little bit, or they tend to be too reliable on their source. I know.
Yeah, my lawyer sat down with me and he says, "Are you sure you want to say some of this stuff? Because
Yeah,
it's kind of embarrassing and makes you look bad." I says, "I don't care. I'm being honest. I would rather somebody look at it and go, oh, well, at least he's being honest." Now, are there certain things in that book that I had to be careful with? Sure, but you can change names, dates, locations, and not get into specifics.
yeah.
But there's a whole lot of it because just in the first 5 years alone of doing this, I mean, two Albanian guys tried to kill me and my attorney,
Yikes!
chasing us through the streets in Brooklyn with firearms. I mean, it was insane, just fucking insane.
Wow.
Yeah, oh yeah.
When it gets real world, that gets crazy. Well, so this. There's and anybody watching knows this. There's three truths, and this is where it gets a little tricky. There's three truths, just like there's three types of people in this genre. There's three truths. There's personal truth, which is what you believe to be true. There's the political truth, which is what everybody kind of does in consensus. And then the third is the objective truth, which is kind of black and white, right? The challenge in this space is it falls down to either political truth, if enough people get together, it's true,
Right.
or if it's personal truth that these guys try to screw me, so I ratted on them first. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Right.
that's where I think your angst comes from. Is there's too much personal truth versus objective truth.
There is only one guy, Chris, and I see you in the back. I'm going to bring you on in a second. There's only one guy, honestly, that I've ever seen that just came right out and said, "I'm a fucking rat. I'm a scumbag. I hate myself." And that was Frank Ganji. He's the
Oh wow.
only one I've ever seen, I mean, he's still a rat, don't get me wrong, but he was at least, there was no excuse for what I did. But everybody else, I'll use Jimmy Calandra as a reference point. Anthony Spiro perverted kids. The last time I checked, and I think you know this as well, it's not like you're just walking down the street to buy bubble gum and an elder statesman of the mob is like, "I like you. You're joining the mob. You're going to do violent shit." I mean, that's not the way it works.
Yeah, yeah, agreed.
I'm
Even
gonna
that, even
you
that,
mind if I bring on Chris Gorky?
absolutely.
Hello,
Hey,
Christopher.
what's up?
Hey, Chris, how
How are
are you?
you? Good. This is a good conversation tonight. Jeff, what real deal on the chat asked, what year did Riccobeni flip?
He started. See, it's okay. So it's sort of a technicality because he never testified against anybody in court, and he never gave them any information after 1952 that would get anybody criminally indicted. It still makes him an informant, but I believe it started in 62 and went through 68.
Oh, okay.
Which
Yeah,
most of that happened when he was doing time in Lewisburg for narcotics charges. But Rocco Scaffidi gave him 10 times what he gave him. But it's an interesting comparison because, and this goes back to my point with content creators is you always hear people say when they talk about South Philadelphia, especially, "Oh, Bruno and Riccobeni got along so well. He didn't make Riccobeni kick up." But here's Riccobeni talking shit about him in prison, saying this guy was made, then becomes a captain, and then isn't a boss all within a couple of year period.
Yeah.
So it's like there's that infamous backbiting we see in organized crime because
that was the Hunter guys, right?
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah. I have an interesting story about Michael Francis. So I always thought he was full of shit with the whole Christian thing. And I'm not saying he doesn't believe he's a true Christian and all that, but he's still a schemer, right? So he had his show, and I was listening to one time, and if you want to talk to him, he said, "Oh, there's a small charge to talk to me for advice and this and that." And out of curiosity, I just want to see how much he charged. So I got an email I emailed them, and someone reached back to me and called me. He wanted $700 for a 15-minute conversation.
Yeah, but you know what?
That's not what the lawyer charges for
I would
fucking.
pay that to scream obscenities at him for 15 minutes. Are you? Here's my thing. He emailed me one time, no bullshit. And he says, "What is your problem with me?" And I said, "Here's the Variety article. Here's your FBI paperwork. Learn to tell the fucking truth."
Yeah.
That's it.
But the thing is, what kind of Christian, and I understand, okay, the guy still has a right to make money, and a lot of people are going to hit him up personally, can't get to everybody. But what kind of Christian charges someone $700 for a 15-minute conversation to seek help with something?
He's Michael Francis.
Well, can I somewhat defend this a little bit?
Oh, boy.
Go ahead.
Okay.
You can try.
So I guess you could say I'm friendly with Michael, right? He's been on my show 3 times. I'm going to see him in Atlantic City. Whenever I text him, he always reaches out. A lot of these guys want money to come on the show, never charge me a dime. We have a pretty good rapport, right? But I think there's some fallacies. Unless this change, he's a Christian. I'm not splitting hairs, but he's not a minister as far as I know. He's a Christian speaker, which is a little different. A minister is obviously you're ordained, you're a person of the cloth, and you are part of the church community. So he has to pay his taxes like everybody else. He has to, he's a normal citizen in that sense. He's a Christian speaker where he does go on the circuits. There is a market for this. He does charge fees to visit these mega churches and etc. He has his narrative and his story. So he does make money doing it. And that's kind of the free market aspect. Do I believe, he's a Reformed Christian? I personally do, because, this would be a long shtick if it wasn't, right? He would recidivate, or there's something that pop up that would kind of be scummy. But in terms of the charge, I think that's a little exuberant even for him. He shouldn't even charge that now. I think that's a little high, but that's my thought.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I said he has a right to obviously still earn a living and being a popular guy. 1,000,001 people are going to try to hit him up personally for conversations. I get that. But I don't care what his title is as a Christian. I'm just saying, as a regular Christian, regardless if you're whatever you are, a priest or just a regular guy, I don't know any other Christian that's going to charge.
You know what it is. You know what it is. There's 2 parts, and I think Jeff's going to laugh at this statement. It's harder to get into Harvard than it is the mafia, right? Think about it, right?
No, it is.
Probably at best 850 made men in New York, probably 50 or so in New England, maybe 100. And what's the Italian American population there? In the millions. So you're talking like 1/10 of 1%. So you have to be Italian. You have to be in that life. You have to be around these guys and be accepted. You're probably talking about 1 of every 5 million, right? In terms of numbers. So the acceptance rate is less than Harvard. It's a very exclusive club, right? Now, on top of that, an active guy is not going to talk to you. And as much as we talk about informants, and Jeff, stop me if I'm wrong, the Genovese, I think, is like under 10. And there's probably at most made informant members in history about 100. So now you're talking like a very small group. So if I was a made member and if I was an informant, I'd be a rare person to talk to, and I probably would charge money as well. That's a little high. Now, where it becomes wrong is if he does it under the auspice of the club or church, and it's like, hey, I want to help you with faith. Sorry, Chris. If I want to help you with faith or want to give you guidance, faith-based guidance, then that's wrong. But if you want to talk to a mob guy, there's a fair market value, and you could argue that they can get a high amount for it.
So here comes the question. Do you know what's coming? This guy informed. He, in fact, informed, okay, but yet says he didn't. And where I sort of draw the line with him is he says, no, he never didn't. No, he never did. And while we can talk about the Variety article where he admits to it, he also got a sentence reduction for giving up information. And I don't understand why he does not admit to that.
Well, so he's a smart guy, and that's why he's on the top of the heap. He's wordsmithing.
Of course.
My testimony or what I ever said or did never put anybody in jail.
Except for Norby Walters.
Correct. But if you want to split hairs, I believe he's got his sentence.
Cyrano Salerno too, right?
Yep. I believe he got his sentence commuted. But then if you really want to split hairs, Norby Walters wasn't even a made guy. So I'm kind of devil's advocate on this one. that he took an oath to him and said, you know what, I'm not going to inform. And he broke that by talking to anybody.
That's the only point. I'm not. I'm not going to split the hairs with how many people he put away. But in reality, he's wordsmithing, and every time I've called him out on it, he says he just deletes my comment, and that's my thing. I think if he just came out and said, "Look, I was done with this. I didn't want to do this anymore. I did what I had to do," then I don't think everybody can have their opinion on it. But he just continues to invent things like the gas scam that he invented that he didn't.
Yeah, that was the Russians. Well,
Tom, I always thought you're a good guy. You're pretty fair and balanced, and obviously you have a relationship with Francis to a degree. So I get you kind of trying to defend him, but I'm just gonna say I think all of it's full of shit, and the guy's a total fraud. I'm just gonna be honest. No disrespect. You're defending a guy. You know, I get it. The guy's a fraud. I mean, it doesn't matter if he's in the mob or not. You rat on someone, you rat on someone. It's like when Sammy the Bull put away in his interview, a little sit-down thing with Francis, someone brought up, well, you put more people away than just Frankie Lucasio. What about all the other people that didn't do anything to you? He's like, oh, whatever, they were nobodies. It doesn't matter. You're hurting them.
Well, so I will say this, because, and I appreciate you calling me fair and balanced, because that's probably the nicest thing I heard lately being called.
No, I think you are.
But what I will say is this, you know, I actually hear what you're saying. I don't largely disagree with you. I was just trying to give you a different insight on what would be the reason why he does it. I'm not really willing to die on the hill for any of these guys. You know what I mean? Because everybody has this thing where I'm super friends with everybody. I define my friend, my 5 closest friends that I know for probably 40 years. I'm only 47, and I know my friends for 40 years. I have my family, I have my faith. So I'm not super friends with these people, but acquaintances, or they were on the show or whatever. But I think out of the group though, and again, and this is where I think Jeff and I disagree. I see it as a spectrum. He sees it in black and white. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong. I super respect his opinion. I think for the most part, he may disagree, but it says, okay, that's how you feel. That's for you. But I think of the lot, and things are getting uglier between these informants, I think he's probably the tallest short guy in the bunch, in my opinion. I think a lot of these guys are showing their rear and their ugly heads, in my opinion.
Here's what it is. And I'm not trying to get into politics. It's kind of like how Donald Trump is an asshole. A lot of people don't like him. So the FBI goes after him with everything they got. But when other politicians commit crimes, they get a pass. Michael Francis talks all warm and friendly, kind of like Mikey Scars in a way. He talks all genuine and down to earth, and he's this nice. So people overlook that he's, his misdeeds. You know what I mean? To me, they're all the same. If you do something wrong, you do something wrong. A nice personality compared to a guy who maybe isn't such a nice personality doesn't erase the wrongdoings you've done. That's how I see it.
Yeah, no. It comes out of marketing too. Some of these guys market themselves well, and some of them don't. But I'll forgive you an example. I don't think Jeff cares about anybody's marketed. I think he looks at the facts and then maybe puts the opinion on top of the facts, and people may agree or disagree. I think there's a lot of people that may listen to Jeff that disagree with him, but they respect him. There's a difference. You know what I mean?
Well, not everybody's going to see it my way, and I can get it from a non-street perspective. You have people that just want to get so close to the mafia, and that's the only way that they can. So I understand why they enjoy it, why they listen to it. But at the same time, what sickens me is what a stand-up guy. Oh, what a great guy. No, you're a fucking coward because you put people in fucking jail. You made wives fucking go on welfare. I mean, that's but let me say this, to be fair, nobody's innocent, and it's not like somebody was minding their own business on the street corner and suddenly got arrested because somebody told. I mean, somebody was doing something. But I've seen the opposite end of that spectrum, and I've seen good friends go away who did literally nothing. They just said hello, but because somebody's wearing a wire and the feds have a hard on, that's what happens. And I also think if you want to pretend to be this fucking Christian Bible thumping, I care about everybody, stop talking about your mob shit then. Stop bragging about your mob shit. because that's not a good look. If you, how would the look be if the Pope stood up and said, "Well, molestation used to happen, not really a big deal now, but people would go crazy." And that's my thing is, he wouldn't be making any fucking money if he wasn't who he was.
Right.
So in many ways, he's using the Christian crutch with the mafia shit to bring him money. And listen, people pay him. God bless. Take the money and run. But I think there's a bit of hypocrisy there.
Well, I've been following for a while. I'm sorry, Chris. Go ahead. I'm going to cut you off.
No, I was just going to ask a question. If Michael Francis never got caught, right, never came close to getting a long jail sentence and died, nothing, right, and he just continued his life free of the FBI, would he still be this reformed Christian, or would he still have been in the mob to this day?
I can't even answer that.
I don't know.
I could. The guy, he'd fucking still be in the mob. That Bible ain't fucking dropping down from the sky and hitting him in the head if he doesn't get caught.
I will say this. If you look at his channel and let's just say, I remember, Larry McShane, Jeff, right?
Yeah, not a fan, but yeah.
I know a lot of people get on about the chin book and some other things. So he's like he's the poor Jerry Capisi.
Yeah, he is.
That's the best way to describe it. And thank you. Hopefully you won't rip me apart on that. But so I like Larry, good guy. I'm on the phone with him once. They were doing an article on like the rise of the mob podcast. And he knows I have a marketing background. And he said to me, he goes, "Tom, I know you do some marketing and stuff. As a market, what's a real market in this space?" And I said, "It's not 1 million subs max at Francis, by far not." Why? Respectfully, I've been following Francis for a while, and I will tell him this. It's not a big deal. I'm not saying anything wrong. I think of his 1 million subs, I think about 400,000 are of the deep Christian faith that follow him along his journey and that probably stick around to hear a good mob story, right?
So let me ask you one question really quick, because it's just on my brain. If I don't get it out, would that guy ever sit down with a guy like me?
Probably not, because the risk and reward is not there for him at this point.
No, it's all risk. It's no reward for him.
Correct.
Trust me.
Like he might gain. Let's just say he does it, and he's a good talker, and let's just say you're satisfied with it, and he moves the goalpost over a little bit, right? And some people, I didn't like him, but I have a little respect for him, right? He wouldn't make any more or less money, so I don't think, I don't think it would matter. And I think what's happening here, like him and Sammy, he's doing a better job at it than Sammy. But Sammy, for whatever reason, I don't know what happened to his money, and he seems to be like over focused on making money, because the day of like them picking up your movie rights and you walk into Netflix and getting a $5 million check is long gone. You got to make money, AdSense off of those one-on-one meetings, off of speaking, off of podcast appearances. And the truth of the matter is, I think Sammy, from a marketing perspective, and we can chat about this if you'd like, from a marketing perspective, I think he overshot himself, and I think he's not gonna come back.
Well, now he's just inventing shit that never happened.
Well, a symptom, and I was gonna say this earlier, a symptom of these outrageous lies from him and other creators is a result of lack of content and talent.
Thank you. I'm glad you said that. I'm glad to hear somebody else say that. Chris, you were listening to the beginning, right?
Yeah.
What's your opinion on, just to get your opinion on the state? Because I complain to you all the time on the back end. I'm always calling and screaming about this one and that one. But what is your opinion on people that just invent headlines and narratives that aren't true, and then when you call them out just to correct the record, their first response is to just continue to lie?
Well, I mean, that's just the nature of people. When someone gets caught in a lie and they're called on it, most people's immediate reaction aren't like, "Oh, you're right, my bad, I'm sorry, I admit I lied." Most people, they double down and just get mad and turn it back on you. It's one thing to invent and lie about people who are dead, who you can't hurt anymore. Not that that's right.
Well, that's always convenient to bring up
But-
the dead guy doing
right,
it.
because the dead guy can't talk. But when you're lying about people that are living and you're telling lies that could possibly hurt a person, that's 100% wrong. And I think you have every right to call someone out on the lies. I mean, you have this, the certain content creator we're referring to is calling a guy a mobster who never did a crime in his life, that owns the restaurant or whatever. Like, that's pretty fucking bad. Let me ask anybody in the chat, and I hope he's listening, this content creator. What if someone was putting you in crimes? What if someone, not that you have the balls to really do anything, but like if you did, what if someone's putting you in crimes that you didn't do right now and putting a target on your back? Would you like that? You probably wouldn't. But you're doing that to people.
I said this last week. I said I had a mob informant tell a federal judge I was a made guy in the Genovese family and in the South Philly mob, and the judge looked at me and says, "What are you going to do?"
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. It's funny too because so I got a funny story. There's nothing inappropriate, so I could say his name. So I go to Il Coliseo in Brooklyn, right? It's one of my favorite restaurants in 18th Avenue. It's owned by Lorenzo Menino, right?
I was there last night.
Oh, fantastic! What did you? Fantastic place.
I loved it. I just had regular chicken parm like I do any other time,
which is fantastic. The
everything's
excellent. He's from Torrente originally. It's a part of Sicily. They have really good food. I've been to Sicily, so I go there and eat. Right, so I go next door to Cafe Sorrento. I know it's a Gambino spot, but I went there anyway. I'm like with my fiance now, my wife. I'm like, it's great. You're not gonna get any better espresso than there. Get espresso, and I get 2 cups served to me. I told the story on my show once, and they're paper cups. So I almost shit. Sicilians speak differently, do things differently. Everything's double entendre. I took it as like, hey, get the hell out of here. We know who you are, right? So I'm shitting already. So I text somebody I know. He goes, no, they serve everybody plastic cups.
Yeah, they do that. They do that in Queens too at a place.
Yeah. I'm like, thank God. Because
the other guys get the acrylic. I get the paper. Correct. I'm like, what the fuck?
Correct.
I know how that goes.
And I looked in the sink and I saw dirty acrylic cups, and I'm like, fuck, this is gonna get me. So now I found out that's fine, right? So we're about to leave, and my fiance, my wife, and that goes, I need to use the bathroom. Like, we should, can you wait a second? Maybe go somewhere else. I don't want to bother these guys. Next thing I know, Lorenzo walks in. Oh, Jesus. So she goes to the bathroom. He orders a drink, espresso. It's such a boss move. He gave $5 off a $2 espresso. He has this espresso. Guy you can tell just biting his ear off. And he's such a boss, and he has that eminence around. I'm not saying a boss of anything illegal, a boss of a restaurant and a Kiss Cafe.
I have no idea who that guy is.
And I saw him, and I'm not gonna lie. I was scared. Like, I didn't do anything to me, and he was very respectful and said, "Well, he has no clue who I am." But it's just the point of these guys are regular guys. They own businesses, they're regular people. There is an aspect to it, right?
Well, and that's a fantastic point that you bring up, because guys that, for me, they're just guys in the neighborhood. They're not Robert De Niro. They're not Joe Pesci. They're not some big actor. They're neighborhood guys. So it's funny when people, and this is the clue in that, because I am, the moniker is Mob Hump on me too. But here's the thing. When people will chastise somebody I've been around and they'll say, oh, he ran into so-and-so, he thinks he's a big guy. That tells me more about you than it does me, because to me, they're not anybody but Billy, Tommy, and Johnny. But to you, there's somebody. And I think that's the problem with a lot of content creators that have never met anybody in their life, haven't been around that way of life. To them, like a Gravano on their show is like the biggest fucking thing that'll ever happen to them. And I get it. And I understand that. But the difference between me and a lot of people is they're just normal guys to me. They don't wear tracksuits. They don't have 15 gold chains. They don't. And that's why when I see other content creators, as a matter of fact, one content creator had said on his show that Ron Previty was a big, tough mob guy. And I started laughing my fucking ass off, because you know what was told to me about him? That he was a meth head. That was it. He was good at stealing jewelry.
He was kind of sickly too, right?
Yeah, of course.
He must have been doing some bad meth, because usually he should have shed a few pounds He must have got some bad shit.
But that's my whole point, is that if you're not around those guys and never have, then you might look at them that way. But to me, that's like, it's not abnormal to be somewhere and run into somebody that may be that way.
Yeah,
I don't go, oh, let me pull out my camera, I'm about to come in my pants. It's not, you know.
You brought up a good point earlier, Jeff, and I'm the same like you. I have something on top of my head I want to share real quick. Is a lot of it's about disclosures too, right? Like there's nothing wrong with being like, hey, you know what? I'm like Wikipedia Plus. You know, I look at this and I tease out a morsel you may not have picked up, or a fact that's overlooked by the media. I think this name comes up a lot. I don't know where you land on him, but I think OC Shorts does a nice job for the most part. He just takes stuff that's out there, packages it up, puts it in a nice short, wash, rinse, and repeat. From a marketing perspective, I think it's fantastic. And that type of stuff is going to add value, not, you know, hey, I got a phone call, word on the street, all that kind of stuff.
Good marketing, just not accurate.
Well, that's my point. So
yeah.
You know, in marketing, we say if something's not working, you have a marketing problem or a product problem.
Right.
And it's actually in this genre, I think some of the folks are well marketed. They have the subs, they have the views, but they don't have the product. And I think that's what irks you.
Yeah, it might. I just don't, you know, I've been doing things for a certain way for so long, but I think this fall it's really going to change with what, you know, we're trying to do, change it up a little bit. And it may not, because I think at some point, you know, I always hear people say, oh, all these guys do is talk about the same five things. And that's 100% not the case. And they would know that. If they join my podcast, they would know that, because I just don't go there. Chris, let me ask you something. Tom had asked me at the beginning of the show, he had said, what do you think needs to change in the genre? Like, do we just have to like push aside some of these people that just aren't any good at this, or how do we rectify it?
I don't really know if you can rectify it, because unfortunately, people just want to be entertained. And if there's content creators that are inventing stuff and putting out nonsense, and the average person's entertained, they're going to keep eating it up. Like content creators gain loyalty in their fans with their support. And your thing is, you always say, if these people ever did a little bit of research, they would see that this person's lying. But how many people of just an average listener to whatever content creators is going to go digging into all this paperwork and stuff?
They're not.
So if you have a bunch of listeners that are loyal to one content creator A, a content creator B, content creator C, and they're being entertained by him and accepting what they're being told as the truth because they believe in the person, how do you rectify that? You know what I mean? All you can continue to do is just point out, listen, I have paperwork here that clearly states what this person said is not accurate.
Right.
Will it change much? Probably not, because it hasn't changed much for how many years now.
No, it's not. I mean, I could tell you tomorrow if somebody said the sky was green, and I could take a picture and show you it's not.
It's too much about entertainment for these people instead of what's accurate and true.
Well, and I'll say this as well. There are some content creators that once again, I'm not being specific, but they also are behind the scenes doing their dirty little shit. And it's like, this is why you really don't see me engage in that. I'm too busy with what I'm doing. Every once in a while, I'll say what I need to say, but the old me would have been like all in on that kind of shit.
I get worn out by it, man. It's exhausting trying to keep up with their lies and keep up with their nonsense. But like, hey, here's an example, just for anybody that's listening, that listens to some of the other shows. Obviously, the certain alleged mob boss that this guy was talking about having connections to the CIA. Number one, obviously, we know that's not true. Right. But let's just play it out. Hypothetically, and it would never happen. I mean, obviously, maybe it happened 60 years in the 60s or whatever with Giancana or whatever. But let's just say hypothetically that did happen. How in the world would some average Joe who's a mob content creator know that to be true? How would he get that information? That wouldn't get out to anybody.
No,
and it's not true. But I mean, there's no way that would get out as true.
I'll give you. So I am in my kind of non-YouTube life, and it reflects a little bit of my YouTube life. I have a little bit of an extreme personality. Like I can't just like get an interview. It has to be like Totorina's son. You know what I mean? Like I need to talk to Pablo Escobar's wife. Like I need to, like I can't like go by like another source, right? Like I need to go directly to the source, and obviously I can't talk to Pablo or Totorina, but I could talk to the closest of kin, right? So my point being is, I actually working on a former CIA agent to come on the show. I had a former FBI guy who worked in special ops. Could not talk about any of it. Did 20 years over, but he talked about the FBI side of things. But I'm going to reach out to him to get his CIA buddy on, and he's obviously not going to tell me and confirm this person's stuff. But I do want to ask him: do you think the CIA gives a shit? Now, not Italian Cosa Nostra. They probably care a lot about it, but do they really give a shit about the American mafia? And I want to hear his point of view. See, what I do is I try to go directly to the best expert. Like, you ever see Pawn Stars? Somebody comes in, they try to sell him something, and now it's staged. But he goes,
and they reach out to the expert.
Let me call my guy. One thing I even maybe a drop successful in life is I know what I don't know, and I do my best to get an expert on in that space. So I wouldn't mind talking to some CIA guys on and off the record to kind of find out, like, why would a CIA agent or operative have a relationship with an American Cosa Nostra member? I can maybe see maybe something in Sicily, maybe, but I just
Real deal. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Real Deal. Contribute if you guys can. But yeah, so
please do.
Yeah, and I'd personally like to talk to experts on it, not give my opinion, you know.
So here's a question that's from the chat.
Tom.
Who are some of the best content creators in your guys' opinion? So let me just go first. I really don't watch mob genre stuff. Honestly, I don't. I watch some of RJ stuff, but I can't stand Mikey Scar, so I have kind of a tough time with that. Yeah. But I really don't watch a lot of mob stuff because I'm a nitpicker. And there's the other reason why I don't do that is because I want to come up with my own ideas and my own kind of viewpoints. And I feel like if you're watching what everybody else is doing, even by proxy, even if you don't intentionally mean to, you're going to snipe a little bit and take stuff. And I don't want to do that from anybody.
Got it. I would say, and I want to hear Chris's thought. In my opinion, I do like OC Shorts. I don't know about you, but I look at watch time of a show, and a lot of times I don't have 25 minutes unless I'm driving.
Right.
So I like OC Shorts a lot. Consistency is key with him. I don't know if you ever saw Jay Cletty's Rackets. I don't know if she's still doing her show. I like her.
I saw a couple of those. Yeah, those were good. Nice
woman, gives a different spin, a very soft, elegant, kind of noir kind of theme. So I like her show a lot when I used to watch a little more of this stuff. I'm just trying to think offhand. I respectfully know, like I watch. I got to probably sign up RJ to sign up, but I do watch RJ when he's on with Michael. I think they provide a different outlook.
I think the best up and coming guy is Jake Stoops.
I never heard of him.
I can't even think of I can't think of his channel name. Damn. But I did an interview with him.
I'll find it here, Real Mob or something like that.
Yeah, I did an interview with him, and he is like terrific with the paperwork. And he's only been around for about a year. He has a regular day job, so he doesn't have time to do it. But he's like almost surpassed all the people that have been in the genre in 2 years. He's about to go past every single one of them.
Members only podcast.
Yeah, the members only podcast. He's fantastic. And I remember he started as, once again, a listener of mine. And I get these emails all the time from people where they say, hey, I'm going to start a podcast. And I kind of roll my eyes because I know how difficult it is. And I know it's not for everybody.
Oh, I saw this guy. I like him a lot. And
Yeah.
I only had one knock on him. And then I got to sub again to him. I'll do sub to him. Okay. I had one knock. I'm like, why isn't this guy bigger than he was? Anyway, I think I caught him at like 2,000 subs.
I think a lot of the reason why is because he works a regular job. And like, this is just a hobby to him. He's like not trying to get rich off of it. And he asked me a bunch of times, can you please come on my show? And I'm kind of like, I don't like doing interviews. I don't like talking, just because I don't want to give the public any smidgen of my private life for any reason. Unfortunately, on my podcast, I do that all the time. But I did it, and it was one of the easiest interviews I've ever had. And he's going to bypass a lot of people because he's good, and he had information that I couldn't even find, and that's rare. Rare. Chris, what are some of your favorite content?
Well, I mean, I could tell you there's not a lot of options here. I mean, you got one guy who killed a 16-year-old child. He lies regularly and talks about dildo pumps, penis pumps. You got another guy who's dead grandparents all of a sudden showed up. The house shook and he told him to rat. He's very credible. You got another guy who knows that mob bosses have CIA connections and ate Frosted Flakes with some other guys that took him grocery shopping. So those guys are out. Jake is good. Because like you said, he does the paperwork. I mean, obviously, I think you're the best. And that's honestly not biased. I have my reasons. I know Jeff knows legit people. He's the only one that's going to be closest to actual alleged street people to get the politics of the street. Plus, he does the most research than anybody. But, besides Jeff, I do like Jake. He gives it his all, and he does a ton of research. RJ's pretty good. I don't agree with everything he says. I do like OC Shorts. I know it's not one of Jeff's favorites, and I showed him some things that OC said. But he does do not even a tenth of the paperwork that Jeff does, but he will show on his show some FBI.
His visual presentation is great.
Yeah, as well edited, yeah.
However, just really quick, the only thing I ever said to him was, when are you going to start taking authors' words for this being facts and rats? Because there's a whole nother side to the story. And and I'm not knocking him, but I'm just saying, if you're only going to rely on what informants tell you, then you're skewed from the beginning. But if you give both sides, and I know not everybody's like me, but I've always thought if I give you the pros of Tom La Vecchia and the cons of Tom La Vecchia, and I say it's up to you to make your decision, that's being fair and balanced. Yeah. But I just, me, I'm always going to.
Tom, you always had a good show too. I don't mean to count. I said you're not. I know you said you're not doing it much anymore, but like your interview with
I have Mobsters Inc. and I'm gonna put some stuff on there. I do have some. I'm gonna be back in the game somewhat. I'm gonna
I do like your interviews, and I know Jeff's not a fan of her, but like with Rita Giganti and Total Rena's son, like that it's interesting to get their perspective.
To me, that's like the interview of a lifetime. Total Rena's son. And listen, it's I've always liked Tom. Tom and I'll I'll poke and needle Tom a little bit over John Panisi, but there's a reason why, and it's because he said things about people I know that were just totally bullshit. But I do have one question I want to ask both of you, and it's not a personal attack question. It's just point blank. Jeff Nadeau, okay, and you both interviewed Sammy the Bull, correct?
Yes.
How come nobody asked about Alan Kaiser?
Okay, so that's a great question. So I and it's not a cop-out. I went for the business angle to the point of he didn't understand my questions. Him and I both had COVID during our interviews, so we're both not well. That's not an excuse. So I had my questions down, and so my angle is this. I personally look at the Gambino crime family in the 80s as a $500 million a year enterprise. If it was on the stock exchange, or would easily be in the Forbes 500, probably in the Forbes 100, right? So I was really super fascinated to talk to Sammy about him and John and Frank Lacasio's decision and decisions to preside over this Borgata post Castellano. So that was the agenda and the reason for me interviewing him to the point you watch, and this is one of my things I didn't like about the interview because I'm critical of myself. I think he even went because he wasn't really prepped. It went over his head. You know what I mean? Like to the point, and then like he has his talking points that he uses on every show. You know, like Tado said, use both ears to listen. You know, whatever. And I'm like, oh come on, man, I want a real interview. So my point being is the reason why I didn't ask about Alan Kaiser was this was really for the business end of it, and I really wanted to extract that. It would have been very, 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 and I don't want to say the right word. It would have been out of left field and incongruent to the interview. I did ask him though, does he have any regrets? And that could have been a good chance for him to bring that up. But short answer for me, it was incongruent to the interview.
Well, that, and I think if you had asked it, he'd have gotten off the interview immediately.
Which he might have. And I'm not. And believe it or do you watch Joe Rogan? Either of you guys?
I do.
I kind of come from the Joe Rogan school of and he'll admit this as well, podcasting. I'm not like the super I gotcha guy. It's
Right.
not that like I'm not hard hitting. It's not like I don't want to know. They're guests, right? And like, you know, come in your house, wipe off your shoes, sit down, right? And he was a bigger guest for me. Like I said, it was very incongruent. But separate from that, I'm just not the super I gotcha guy. Does it make my because I don't make a lot of money doing this. And if anything, I probably lost money in the long run with the guests I have and
Sure.
you know, time spent away from my company, time away from my beautiful wife and family. So my point being is the reason why I do this also is I'm very selfish, right? If I can chat with him, right, I want to extract, you know, hey, you know, John was making a lot of bad decisions. Why didn't you kind of jump in on that? Or, you know, how did you guys truly manage the captains that weren't on board? That's the shit I'm so interested in. And I know it's like so niche and probably 1% of the audience wanted to hear what I didn't ask. It's what I'm into, and I'm a little selfish in that.
Did you think that you were going to get the truth out of him? I mean, in fairness, did you figure he would give you like 25% truth and the rest bullshit?
My interview scope was different than Jeff's. Mine was a topical interview, which was the focus. I really wanted to know what it was like being a COO of a $500 million criminal enterprise. That's what people could fault me for that, but that's what I super cared about.
Did they talk to you before the interview to go over certain things of like do's and don'ts?
No, so because I know Karen, and I had a little more. I probably had a little, and I might, and Jeff can get on me for this. I might have wasted it. He knew his niece. He went to the wedding. He knew my cousin. My first cousin. I didn't go because they were estranged, and they wouldn't let me go anyway. But my point being is we're related. So like, I never met Sammy in person. I know Karen really well. So I probably had a little more flexibility. Maybe I didn't take advantage of that flexibility, but it's really not the scope of my interview with him, and it's really not the scope of my show. Chris, I said, like I asked like Rita Gigante, like business question, like I ask everybody sometimes, like or like hey, like did you? I always ask this all the time. When your father allegedly became boss, how did your family's life change? Did it mean more income? Were the guys standing outside? Did you get a new Cadillac? I'd like to see the machinations behind the life. And like I said, I'm a little more focused on the business end.
So Karen, did she tell you like can't go here, can't go there? Like
no, the opposite. I dealt more with Ramona on this one, and she was like, "Have at it,"
Yeah. Well, she knows you're a nice guy.
Listen, I mean, it's fair. I mean, you wanted to do it a certain way, and I can agree if you're trying to do a straight interview, like it's not gonna be the brightest idea to just come right out of the gate of, so you killed a 17-year-old kid, you fuck. Why don't you want to talk about that? Like, I get it. That would be the first thing out of my mouth, but that's why I'm different than everybody else.
But I will say this really quick. I will say this, and I can say this. If and maybe this is the right group. If I think her name is Joy. Forgive me, his sister, I believe. Forgive me if I'm wrong. I believe she's out on the internet. She did comment on my show a few times. I invited her to come on. If she obviously doesn't want to come on, maybe she feels an inclination not to come on. I don't blame her. But if Jeff said to me, "Hey Tom, I'd like to come on because I need a counterbalance and I want to present A, B, and C," or I trust Jeff enough that if there's a resource to have on who's a subject matter expert, I have an open forum. Chris, you know my show well enough. I have an open forum. If somebody wants to come on and give their version or their story on what happened, I am more than happy to have them on. I know, I don't think Karen would not be friendly.
So how about this, Tom? How about this? So when Sammy brought up Alan Kaiser once, said he came running at the car and Louis Melito shot him in the forehead or in the front. I challenge Sammy Gravano right here, right now, whenever, to try to explain your way out of saying he was shot from the front in the head when the autopsy shows he was shot from behind, Alan Kaiser.
Yeah, if there's forensic or there's empirical evidence, I'm not afraid to have somebody have on. And Gary Koopa, again, and again, there's narratives that are out there, but I do believe, and John Gotti wasn't an idiot. John Gotti was not an idiot by any stretch, but I do believe that Sammy manipulated him in some way to get resources his way, whatever that was, killing people, contracts, whatever that was. And why did Gotti pick Gravano, right? He presided over a very strong brigada. He had the Bronx covered with Lucasio. DeChico was gone. Fiala was going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. Danny Marino hated him, so like he had to. Not say there was other guys he could have picked with Sammy. We could push and pull on who would have made a better choice. But from the business aspect, John Gotti made a terrible decision of picking the wrong guy. When I hire a shitty employee, they cost me a lot of money, tens of thousands of dollars. I can't be like, well, it's their fault. No, it's mine, right? So my point being is I was just interested in how they operated, and I was just really shocked and that he wasn't more insistent on, why do you have the 26 captains coming in here every week? You're going to put their pictures on the board. And I didn't really get that from that. So just my thought,
Yeah, I mean, nothing in life, is perfect, right? And everybody, just for people in the chat, I don't want them attacking you because you decided to have him on. But I think one thing that is first of all, I'll say this: Joy Faraci did get the autopsy results. He was shot from behind.
He was okay.
He was shot in the back of the head. It was a decade before the FBI even bothered to tell that family who committed that crime. And the newspaper, they referred to Alan Kaiser as John Doe because he was A, minor, and B, the FBI didn't want to give up his name because if that goes to a jury that he murdered a 16-year-old kid, how's that going to look? Wow. But Sammy has said that the kid was a junkie, that the kid was he was a drug addict and he was running towards the car and all of it. Like, it's just, and I get it. I get it from a certain aspect. You're not going to admit to killing a child, but that to me is like the biggest sort of hypocrisy about the story he tells, because, and I'm going to bring this up, Son of Sam laws. Okay. Yeah. He is profiting off Patreon off of his crimes. Yeah. Okay. And when he disgraced the Faraci family by saying that the kid was a junkie and wouldn't mind his own business, I told Joyce, sue the shit out of him. Just sue him. And he's never admitted to it, but he's changed his story a couple of times. But I wanted to bring one point as far as Gotti goes. If you listen to the wiretap transcripts when he is talking to Frankie Lucasio above the Ravenite, he asks some very specific questions. First of all, we know he belly aches about Sammy, and he's got rebar, he's got construction, he's got this, put it in a fucking notch. Everybody's heard that. But if you look very closely and listen, if you read the transcripts and then you look very closely into what is actually said, he's asking Ocasio, did DB ever talk shit about me? No. Yeah. Did Robert DiBernardo ever steal from me? Because I went and I checked, he never stole a dime. This is Gotti finding out way too late in the game. that Sammy has lied to him to absorb businesses. So I don't,
Well, that's my exact point, though. Like, so that chess and kind of Machiavellian type maneuvers is what I try to extract from it, and try not to, focus on stuff that is not my wheelhouse. Like I said, I'm like a business guy. If I was, if I was in Sierra Leone last week and I was, maybe on a mission, I'm a business guy and I like to look at the business end of things. Again, I'm open to having a show and giving another side of it and give the same amount of air, or if not more air, because my show is probably 3 times bigger than when I had Sammy on the first time. So we could chat, and I could always. I'm wide. That's the one thing you can say what you want about me. I am a free speech guy, and I do have an open forum.
That's good. So here's another thing he said, and Jeff could answer this all shit. Anyways, Sammy said there's people out, and I heard him say this like a year ago. There's people out there saying that I killed people and took over their business, and that's just a bunch of bullshit. Jeff, how many businesses did Sammy take over of people he killed?
It was like it was close to 14.
Yeah.
And here's the reality.
Like, you could prove this.
He had 19, I believe, and some are from wrong, Jeff. I think he was worth legally on the books $19 million net worth at the time of his arrest.
Yeah. I don't care about all that stuff.
What I'm saying is they listed out all the businesses and stacked.
The interesting juxtaposition about Sammy is he brags about all these murders, but to the FBI, and I have paperwork, I'll be glad to share it, is that he admitted to the FBI only pulling the trigger once.
Yeah, that's
once. But we know it's more than that because he killed the bartender he was having sex with, the male, and we know that he killed Alan Kaiser, so that's at least 2. But people don't seem to, and this goes to like, and Tom, I don't want you to think I'm like cornering you.
No, this is good for me to listen to.
My thing is you can't have it both ways. Now, 19 people, this goes back to mob content creators. They'll go, yeah, but he killed 19 people. There is a difference between a murder conspiracy and a murder itself.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Like if I say, hey, I'm going to kill Jeff Nadeau, you guys are listening. Guess what? That's a conspiracy. But he only admitted to killing one person, only one guy.
See, my juxtaposition isn't, I'm not talking about the murders. I'm talking about there's a video of Sammy saying it is people saying I took over people's businesses that were killed is not true. He's saying it's bullshit. And if there's flat out truth that he did take over these people's businesses that he had killed, there you go, another lie from him. Somebody got to put this guy on blast and people have, and you've been doing it for years, Jeff. So
I'll give you an example.
Leopards don't change their spots.
Can I just say one thing about the chat really quick? First of all, whoever just came in here and said that Gunsmoke is running around talking about Angel Gotti, that is unequivocally not true. And please don't come in here starting that shit. That's why you've been banned. Don't come in here and start that shit. Take it to some other fucking drama channel. But Gunsmoke is not talking about anybody. Okay, sorry.
And not just that. We didn't get into that part of it. We kind of alluded to is that part of that corner section of the mob genre is also what's kind of holding it down. But we'll get to that in a moment. So I had Judge Gleason on again. I in my own way try to learn, listen, that kind of stuff. And where he contradicted himself was, I don't believe Judge Gleason has any reason to lie. He's already off the bench. He's in private practice. He wrote his book. And I think Angel's in the audience. He said that he was worried about Gotti. He was going to kill him.
So can I rebuff that for a second?
Yeah.
So in my research, John Gleason subverted information that would have proved that Sammy Gravano was a massive narcotics trafficker.
No comment.
Well, let me just state it for the record. He knew, and the FBI knew that Sammy the Bull Gravano was behind narcotics trafficking with Gas Pipe Casso. And when Gotti and
Casso's full of shit.
Well, he is, but there were 5 other informants in prison that gave that same information, but the DEA refused to speak to them because they were ordered not to.
Lino and a few other guys were in on that. Right?
And then there's the Patsy Conti letter, right? But if you go and find this, I can send you the documents too. If you look at the documents of the Locascio and Gotti appeal, there are several things in there that the government had that they knew Gravano. And all I'm talking about, I'm not saying that is somehow going to make John Gotti not innocent.
Yeah.
Or not guilty. What I'm saying to you is that he perjured himself, and
I will say I believe they ripped up Castle's agreement, not because he beat somebody over the paper, because he would have contradicted. Probably.
Well, sure, yeah, absolutely,
yeah, absolutely.
That I'll give you.
But in the Conti letter and the ship that went down, they picked up wiretaps. And there were 3 or 4 other informants who told the government, I think Vinny the Fish Cafar, was it Vinny the Fish Cafar? No, maybe not. It was somebody else. But they all said that Gravano was involved in heavy narcotics trafficking. And the only reason why I bring that up to you is that it's okay for the government to use 100 fucking informants against John Gotti. Yeah. But you use 5 against Gravano to just basically prove that when they asked him on the stand, do you sell drugs? And he says no.
If I'm not mistaken, wasn't it Comey and Mueller flipped them? I think it was Comey and Mueller. And I think Angel's in the chat. I think it was Comey who went with the FBI and Mueller.
Maybe I'm dogging Gleason for the wrong reason. Maybe no, it wasn't Gleason. Was it Gleason who was at that trial?
Gleason was the prosecutor, but the high ups at like the.
Okay, so this is why I brought this up, because he knew that there was this paperwork about narcotics trafficking. He knew that there were letters from other informants saying that Gravano did this. And this is, I swear to God, this is true. I'll send you the paperwork. He waited till after the convictions to share that information with the defense, which is why they filed an appeal based on Gravano perjuring himself about narcotics trafficking. That's all it was.
Interesting. Yeah, but that's where it gets tricky, right? Because okay, so this is where I get conflicted, right?
Sure.
Comey and Mueller. I mean, the best part is, that what bumped them up in their careers was the flipping Sammy, and then what happened with Comey and Mueller. But that's a whole nother. Jeff, that'll be next week's show. That's cool. But okay. So I think we're all reasonable guys, us three on this panel, right? And sure. I do fancy myself as like a law and order guy. Although I'm raised a Democrat, I'm a law and order guy. I believe in funding the police. I believe in having adequate protection. I believe in the right to protect yourself. And it's just my personal beliefs. So everybody's welcome. I'm saying generalization that most people will agree with, right? But where does the line go? We're like, hey, I'm a law and order guy, right? And we kind of like trust a local, police guy, but we can't trust the DOJ. You get what I'm saying? Like,
no, I understand where you're going with it. Yeah.
What do we do then? Number 2, and it's a slippery slope with informants. And I'm just going to be very direct on this one. What about in cases of terrorism? What about in cases of, child sex trafficking rings? What in cases of domestic abuse? So I'd love to hear both of your thoughts, but I am a law and order guy. I do.
What specifically about it? Like how?
Well, the number one
tool.
Yeah, so the number one tool, and you should chat with him, Jeff. You'd like him. Jim DiIorio. He was on my podcast. Him and I became friends. He retired Fed. He went to West Point. Just a guy's guy.
I can't talk to no Fed. Sorry.
It is private security consulting now.
Can't do it.
Yeah. I'll tell you some behind the scenes stuff. You'll like him. But anyway, so he served overseas to our military for 20 years. He did intelligence and that kind of stuff. He's a badass, right? My point being is him and I chat, blah, blah. And the number one resource that the government has is informants, right? So it's like we can't like defund only certain informants because it's popular, right? So how do we have informants, right? And how do we be law and order? But then you have like the Sammys and a lot of these mob guys. So I want you guys to unpack, or at least give your guys' opinion on. Like,
there needs to be accountability. There needs to be accountability about what the informants are saying are true or lies. And part of where the accountability comes, and Jeff could speak on this, there have been trials with Joey Merlino and Narducci, but particular Joey Merlino, where this informant was caught lying so many times, and the judge allows these informants to slander the defendant, but then judges often don't allow the defense attorneys to question the informant's credibility in lies. Jeff could speak to it better than I can, but it starts with the credibility of a fair justice system to kind of vet if these informants, what they're saying is factual or not. And when you're only allowing one side, the prosecution, to say everything they're saying we're just going to put out as true, and a judge doesn't allow the other side to say, hey, we have proof some of this isn't true. I mean, it starts right there, I think.
I think it comes down to hearsay, right? Like, judges have discretion on what to allow a jury to hear. But I think it needs to either be all in or all out.
That's
And the reason why I say that is, I'll give you a good example of it. This fucking ass clown, J.R. Rubio, had a phone, and he was the one who was testifying against Joey Merlino. He had a phone in prison, and he's basically saying, I'm going to milk this whole entire trial for as much money as I can fucking get. I'm going to blackmail the FBI, the judge, anybody I can do, right? He also was saying aliens were going to land in the cell with him too, which will tell you something. But here's my point. If he's caught on tape, okay, and he's saying he's going to milk it for everything he can get, he wants money, he's going to get a book with George Anastasia, to me, that's relevant to be heard in a courtroom, because it shows his general character
100% relevant
for his motivation. Okay. But when Joey Merlino's defense team wants to play those tapes to show the jury his motivation, the judge says no.
So
And
to answer your question, Tom, that's where the accountability comes.
I might be even more unpopular with this kind of question statement, but what I'm going to share is I look at it. I want to go back even more. I want to go a little deeper, right? And there is a difference of what happened to Patsy and a difference of what happened to, and I'm talking about public stuff, and what happened with Joey Merlino in this case. Rubio shouldn't even been able to park cars at Rigoletto. Shouldn't have been able to park cars, right? Okay. Now, if you look how Patsy handled him and respectfully got served, spend time on that. Whereas Merlino was smarter about it, even though he did nothing wrong anyway, but was smarter about it and nothing happened. My point being is I don't look as much about like the informants or non-informants and all that kind of stuff. I look at it like you're a fucking idiot by having this guy around you. I was going to do like a study. And I think Jeff could probably illuminate this quicker than I could. But most of the informants, I believe, didn't come from like lineage. Most. Sammy didn't. Panisi didn't. Luisi, his father was a street guy, but not like Sicilian made men. Most of these guys were non-lineage guys. I know the exception might be what's his name, Scars, but I think is the exception. Here's my point, right? When you start recruiting the wrong people, shit happens. So I look at it when you have an informant and the guy turns out to be a liar and the guy turns out to be a scumbag, you fucking recruited the wrong guy and you're paying the price. So I look at it more holistically and more from the macro than maybe the micro. And Jeff, it may be the wrong way to look at it. And you're welcome to push back.
I mean, yeah, they got to be careful about who they bring in. But it doesn't, it's not, okay, a mob guy brought some douchebag in who they should have never had near them. Therefore, if they inform on them, we're going to give them an unfair trial and not let the defense team.
No, but if you know this,
you still got to have a fair trial.
Well, in fairness, you can't determine who's going to end up being a piece of shit
that's
at the
correct.
end of the day.
If you notice, and you really unpack, really look at what tripped a lot of these guys up, right? And I'll give you some quick examples. Rubio should have been an associate who dealt with probably a more tenured associate, who dealt with a main guy, who dealt with a captain. When you break your protocol and rank, that's when you can beat up. Look what jammed up Chin. Savino wasn't even a main guy. You could, if you were like Tony Ducks, probably couldn't even meet with Chin very easily. But Savino had unencumbered access. Why? Greed. Whenever greed gets in the way and you guys break protocol, that's when they get jammed up. Am I wrong, Jeff?
No, I just got a text. You're very popular, Tom.
Jesus. No, listen, I just, I have a free thinker. I share my mind, but you get what I'm saying. But you Jeff, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I think. Listen, that lifestyle. You're always going to have somebody that's from the outside in or the inside out, and nobody can ever determine. I agree in principle with you that fucking morons should just be put to the side.
Yeah,
but this world operates in money. And if anybody thinks they can make money off this one, that one, that they're going to do certain things. But I will say this in defense of people is that if you've been alleged to be something for 30 fucking years, you're doing something right. You know what I mean? And if we look at South Philadelphia, and I want to be careful because I don't want to upset people, but every time there's a fucking rat in Philly, it's from the outside in. It's never from the inside out. But I agree in theory that that whole entire trial was a joke from beginning to end. And no, like Rubio probably shouldn't have had access. I will agree with you completely on that. But it goes back to the point that Chris was bringing up, is that judges have a whole lot of leeway on what's allowed to be hearsay and what isn't. You look at this judge in Brooklyn, that this fucking 90-year-old fucking windbag who continues to allow an informant to threaten people and does nothing about it, doesn't violate them.
But okay, so I'm going to go back one step further, and history is going to look back and judge us all. You could probably pick 5 to 7 guys in Philadelphia. We don't need to name who they are. They're part of a crew. They ain't cracking. Why? Because they're the godfather to 3 of the others' kids. And I don't want to put my best friend away who I'm the godfather of their kids. My point being is what Cosa Nostra is supposed to be and what it should have been is supposed to be a tight-knit community within the community of men of honor that protect their neighborhood. And you know what? They make a few bucks doing it, right? These guys aren't like, they're not, the most ethical guys. They maybe didn't have the opportunities that a lot of the other guys had earlier on. Maybe there's language barriers. Maybe there was racism or ethnic, whatever. My point being is, let's keep it super simple. Once you start getting away from your principles and your mission statement and your ideologies, that's when you get tripped up. Now, fast forward 50 years is, I don't know. I'm sorry. Maybe it's hindsight's 2020. But when I saw like Rubio, he was grimy. Like, I'm not a street guy, and I'm sorry. You're trying to tell me none of that griminess was around. So, like, my point being is, if you really examine like where a lot of guys got tripped up, it's like somewhere where protocol was breached, or something was not followed, or there was a little greed in the way, and there's something that tripped up. A pitcher should monopolize a hitter 100% of the time. You know why hitters bat 35%?
Right.
Because of mistakes.
Yeah, and I think going back to the whole informant thing, like, and I get your point of like with terrorism, like you need people to come forward and say things. I get it. But I think you have to not give them so many incentives. And I think the way you do that is by saying, especially in the organized crime circle, once you get into like international terrorism and stuff like that, it's a little bit different. But I think if you say to them, okay, listen, you're going to testify against 20 guys by the rules, you're going to get 25 years if you're found guilty without all this anyway. You're still going to do 14. We're not going to give you the 2-year deal. You're still going to do 14 years. And I know what the counter argument to that's going to be. Well, then they won't tell.
Well, I actually, so people, again, you'd be surprised that I say this, or may not. I don't know. I actually think that there should be a law that if you're an informant on any case, whether it be a child sex ring, organized crime, whatever that is, you should be mandatory to serve a portion of the highest sentence. I don't know if that's
correct, right,
10% or 25%. I don't know what the number is.
Right.
Like, I want it to be efficient enough where we're able to get informants, but the same token that because I'm worried about a guy informing and then getting this great deal. That forget about lying. just being a fucking scumbag. Sorry, Jeff. Just by being a scumbag, right? So that should be enough. So if you want to inform and give the greater good to the public, you know what? You got to serve 10% of that 114-year sentence, because that means you did some grimy shit with that person.
Right. And I think if they did that, it would. And I also think they need to take away the 25% that they get from asset seizures.
Well, that's part of the reason why they do it.
Yeah. That needs to be taken from them as well. I think that's the only way you stop it. But you know what? This is just the way our legal system works, and I just go ahead.
Yeah. The other part is, and and again, some people like this shit, some people don't. I think part of what also hurt the mob in the U.S., and we kind of touched on this last time, was they kind of had to go one of either ways: be like super local, control an area, or go international and go in the drug scene. They did neither, right? They lost the neighborhoods because there were no more neighborhoods, and they were kind of too late to the drug game post Escobar, right? So my point being is they didn't really have an identity, and also on top of it, and for lack of a better word, lack of innovation, right? They were not in on crypto. They were not in on different rackets that were emerging maybe the last 10 to 15 years, right? Maybe when the government, when the pandemic came, listen, they're wise guys. They should have relationships with hospitals and get PPE and sell them for 10x, illegally, like when the World Trade Center went down, like they used firms that were organized crime, involved because they had to get rid of the scrap heap. My point being is they should have did a better job at being in the fabric of society. So they're making a fuck ton of money, right? So now you make a fuck ton of money, right? You make $5 million a year, you have $20 million in assets, and you got 3 kids. You know what? I'm getting a 20-year pinch. I'm getting a 30-year pinch. You know what? I go away. I have my assets, and the Borgata sends, like they do in Sicily to this day, a monthly check in the mailbox or whatever to make sure. And you stop me if I'm wrong. I believe in 2023 Cosa Nostra, I think it's like captain specific. It's not Borgata specific. If you go away as a made man, you're not guaranteed a check every month. So, number one, you're a made guy. You're making $120, right? You don't have assets to defend. You didn't grow up with the guys you're around. It's not innovative. It's not exciting. It's a pain in the ass. And then so what I'm saying is the way they kind of structured their organization over the last 20 years was in a way to almost foster informants. Not innovative, not making a ton of money, making guys that should have never been made, and all these things make a recipe for disaster. That's the shit I'm interested in. That's the shit.
That leads to another question: is it even worth it to get into the mob today? Just do instead of just doing your own thing.
Well, that's my other. If you ever listen to my diatribes, Italian Americans have been very successful in this country by acclamation. And you know what? That cousin doctor could have been the one subscribing those creams out of 13 grand. That lawyer could have been an all-star defense attorney. That pharmaceutical guy could have got us contracts. What I'm getting at is it could have really, if they kind of grew congruent with the Italian Americans in the culture and almost go like semi-legit to Freemasonry and become part of the fabric of society. We don't even have a mob genre because we don't know who these guys are.
Yeah.
Can't argue that.
Yeah.
Can't argue that.
Is it worth it to go? Is it?
Me personally, no. I'm not Italian, but to me, it's not. Not today, anyways.
Yeah.
I have no comment.
No, it's just.
I don't mean disrespect to anybody.
I look at things a lot differently. Good, bad, or ugly, and some people really attach. I'm like Jeff in a way. Some people are like, oh shit, I'm kind of getting what you're saying. You're saying without saying it. I may disagree with you, but I get it. That's why I'm able to look past the micro. Okay, there's informant. Right. They might even lie a little bit on the show, but what I'm going to get from them is really a theme that is part of a bigger puzzle that I'm looking to put together. Not
Jeff says he has no comment, but he already said he's a Jimmy Burke.
I said I would be a Jimmy Burke if I was going to be not anybody's Jimmy. Well, here's one thing I say about informants all the time, just to kind of cap off that subject, is that show me the incentive for them to tell the truth.
Good point.
Give me one solid adult, and this is just directed at people in the chat too. Give me one reason. What's the incentive? And don't tell me God.
Mm-hmm.
Give me one incentive for them to tell it, because I often hear people say, "Well, they don't lie." Well, give me an incentive for them to. They have no incentive to tell the truth.
Incentive. I mean, there really isn't an incentive to tell the truth.
You know, I mean, it just. So
Wow.
let me bring up this one thing. Hold on, let me see. I wrote it down on my little thing here. Where is it? So this is another thought. Lazy is Wikipedia, lazy is books. So why do all of these content creators that we talk about sometimes, why do they always invest on what everybody else says and they just don't put any energy into like factually bringing a case?
Okay, I have their answer. This is not the true vocation. Okay, so you kind of touched on what different types of guys that are in the genre, right? So I'll look at them like economically. You got like yourself, which is rare, which is this is your vocation, and this is your economic needs, right?
Right.
So you are incentivized by putting out a good product.
Right.
If you don't have a good product, you don't eat, right? Then you got like the dabblers, and I probably fall into that, where you don't maybe make your full living off this. You have a good interest. You want to put out a decent product, but you may not be willing to pay the freight to get it done. You might want to pay for that pacer. You may not want to. You don't have the time. You're lazy. You're not knowledgeable. Insert whatever that reason is, right? And I think they're not willing to put the heavy lifting to get the great content out. And again, just like the mob, the lack of innovation. I'll give you an example. I saw, this is not like any individual show. So this is like going like a broad stroke. I started seeing a lot of clickbait. This is my last show. I'm going only private. I'm going to a platform that's only paid. I'm like a lot of these different guys like saying all these different things that are like clickbait. I got big news, and you go in, and it was just clickbait, right?
Right.
A lot of YouTubers do that when they start to be added. And this, I'm on God. I don't want to hear. Well, later on, I get an email from that creator. Well, why are you talking about me subversive? That's what I'm saying in general. I can't. If you said to me who did that, I will not recall individually because I don't.
Right.
And nor do I frankly care, to be honest.
Right.
But because I love media and I love this genre, that once you kind of do that stuff, my last show, I'm going private, whatever you like, all these different like clickbaity things. That's the beginning of the end.
Yeah, and I've always said, like the people that, YouTube isn't my game. I've only recently just started coming back, and it's only to drum up business for my for the podcast that I do, which I'm going to drop that link there.
Guys, donate, because he doesn't ask for it, but I will ask for him. Call to action, donate. Because here's the deal, right? This is content creation is a very tough business, and Jeff has a very expensive camera to pay for it.
I appreciate it, Tom. Yes, please donate if you can. And so, my bread and butter is my podcast. And realistically, I can have 19,000 subs. I did it the old-fashioned way. And you're really only going to draw in, if you're lucky. Like if you look at a chat, I have 19,100 subs. We had about 190 in here all night, which is a pretty good night for me. But when you do the math about everything, when I started my podcast, I said, well, if I'm lucky, 10% of my viewership will join my podcast. But really, at the end of the day, that's pipe dreams, right? Because you really end up with about 3% of that.
Correct.
Okay, 3 to 5.
That's a good. Jeff, that's a very good conversion, 3 to 5.
Let me chime in on something. How about that original question Jeff brought up? Why be lazy? Go to Wikipedia. Why not go to the extent to get it correct for other content creators? If other content creators are just winging it, not doing the paperwork and all that, and they're getting by doing decent numbers by not doing that, what's the incentive for them to put in the extra work, time, and money to do it?
Well, and that's the point. The minute people stop watching them, that's when they'll start to work for it.
Okay, really quick. I really quick. I say this analogy, and people take it the real wrong way, but those people will get it. Okay, and I admittedly have not been working out, but there's two guys at the gym. The guy that works out to get the attention of the ladies, and the ladies are like, oh wow, he's really hot. And then there's a guy who gets attention. I'm not trying to, but gets attention from the women and the men. And the men are like, holy shit, that guy has good gains, or he has good definition. Hey, what's your technique? They want to learn from you because you're top of the game, not just to get women, but maybe they're competing, right? My point being,
I was none of those guys.
But here's my point. In this space, you can be built enough and good looking enough to get the women, but if you get the respect of Jeff Canaris, you get the respect of RJ Rogers. Hey, maybe you come on my show and get a few thousand views. By getting that kind of respect, you'll get your views, but you'll also get respect from the leaders in the community. And over the long run, that's important.
Yeah. The point about the stats I was bringing up is because I like to hear people talk about their stats all the time, because I've been doing this for 10 years. And when I hear people that have been around for a year or two telling me their conversion is like 25%, I start laughing. It's bullshit. There's no way. There's absolutely zero way. And if YouTube, I think at the end of the day, was my only platform, I'd be at 80, 90, 100,000 subs. Easy. But that's not, sort of my platform, but it leads me into
you probably would lose money.
Oh no, I'd lose a ton of money. But my question is, can there be anybody from this small little genre that can be that big? I don't think you can. I think the genre is too small.
Correct. So go back to Larry McShane discussion. So he's like, what's a real max cap? What's a total universe, right? I said, forget about Michael respectfully, because a lot of those people are Bible thumpers, right? Not Bible. I'm a Catholic, don't worry, a Christian, but Bible thumpers. Sammy, for the most part, and remember, media is media. So when he got arrested, when he was on PBD, he's gotten the most media, millions of dollars worth of free media just by being who he is, and he's at 500,000. So just use him as if every single person in this genre went your way. That's 500,000. Then you look at the best number two behind him, because I have him as number one, is OC Shorts. And last time I checked, he might be at 60,000.
Right.
So he's only capturing 10% of that total universe.
Right.
So my point being, and that's just one. So if he was at 350 and I don't know, Jeff Canarsie was at 150, we would have a viable ecosystem that we can collaborate and work off each other.
Right.
But because everybody infights and the market's so small, there's no potential. So I'll give you kind of why I pivoted away to do business stuff, because a guy like Grant Cardone has 3 million subs.
Right.
Look at 1% of his, that's 30,000, right?
Right.
Yeah. So my point being is, it's just not big enough of a market. So here's the challenge: when you don't have a big market like that, you need to have some level of collaboration, coordination amongst creators, so you can maximize this. I'm learning from you, you're learning from me. Hey, check out the Theory podcast, and you grow. Right. But I'll go on somebody's show, and they're we'll make fun of me having no hair. It's we're not here to talk. My point being is, it's also a very immature genre as well, as you guys know.
Right.
But it's not big enough to sustain. I'll give you an example. If this was
twice,
if we were in there's a big genre, the finance scam drama, not finance, calling out the financial scammers, CoffeeZilla. I don't know if you guys heard of him.
Right.
He's the biggest, right? He's at 2 million, and then there's guys at 100,000. This guy Meet Kevin and all these other guys, right? Some are finance guys, some are scammers, whatever that is, right? My point being is, there's a universe there that is 100x what we're doing. So if you're at 100,000 subs, we can live off the AdSense. We can get market, paid dollars, a sponsorship. Right. Because it's so small. I say this all the time. The two people that get the model the best, considering the space and the size, is you and RJ Rogers. I think RJ Rogers' best move was keeping it a firewall with the premium content, just like yourself.
Yeah, I think that's the only way, you make money. And it's funny to me because sometimes when people do decide they want to poke me a little bit, they're like, oh, you only have 19,000 subs. You only have 150 people.
Yeah.
But I'm like, but you don't know how many subs I have on my paid podcast. You don't know how many t-shirts I sell. You don't, so there's a lot to it. But what can this genre do to get better? I just think it goes back to the original question of this show is, how do the RJ Rogers, the Tom La Vecchias, the Jeff Canarsies, how do we push ourselves so far past the people that aren't very good at this and don't know what they're doing? Like, how do we?
Yeah.
I suggested something. Obviously, I'm not a content creator, but
killing them isn't a good enough reason, Chris.
What's that?
I said killing them isn't. You can't.
Hold on. I want to answer really quick, and then I want to get Chris's thoughts.
Yeah, go ahead.
As a viewer, because your opinion is probably more important than mine, because you're the guy kind of writing the proverbial eyeballs, which means checks. So my short answer is, we need to continue to block and tackle every day. Block and tackle, block and tackle, block and tackle, to the point that we may hit a critical mass and then we explode. Because these other guys aren't blockers and tacklers, and over time they're going to fall. Natural selection, exactly. They're going to fall out over time. We just need the wherewithal to do it. Now, why didn't a lot of these people go away? And I have a very simple answer, and I don't count people's money, but I feel like they're in this YouTube in general, and even in the mob stuff, there's generally two types of guys. The one that it's this or bust tables. So if I make $3,000 a month, it's a lot of money for me. As long as I'm making $3,000 a month, baby, I'm in. I'm gonna call you an asshole. I'm gonna make fun of you. I'm gonna dox your kids. Like, I'm gonna continue to do that because I'm so low on the economic totem pole. 3 G's is like a lot of money for me. Right. I'm not saying it's not a lot of money. To the regular person. What I'm saying is, you could scrape together 3K on YouTube, I'm gonna win. Or you get guys like Patrick Bet-David and Rogan have FU money that YouTube in general, that could just like say what they want, do what they want, because they made their bread. Me, I'm in the middle. I still need to stop the Jeep and shut up, because I have clients and I'm still trying to earn money and I'm still trying to get to that level, and I can't afford just to do this full time. But the same token, the 3K a month is not going to be enough incentive for me to do it full time. So what's going to have to happen is the people who are a prayers for FPS's mom. I heard she's not too well, so my positive energy and prayers for them.
Yeah, he'll appreciate that.
Yeah, just I lost my mother in 2014, the worst thing that ever happened to me, and hopefully we'll get to spend as much time with her and get through that difficult time. Chris and I don't always see eye to eye, but all bets are off when it comes to moms, especially when they're not well.
Absolutely. Chris, what was your point?
Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, like, in Tom, you touched on this, and I remember you did a show months back about content creators and what they could all do. Collaboration, I think, is key. Listen, you two are here, and there's people you kind of have some mutual respect for, like RJ, like Jake, maybe OC.
Yeah.
Why don't you guys get together, and if you guys all
ask
your subs, you should ask your subs to sub to everyone else's station. Come together, team together. I mean, it's only a friggin' click of a mouse. And if you guys shared all your subs, I don't know how much more money that would make.
I don't know. I don't mean to throw Jeff under the bus, but Jeff tried. I mean, he good faith effort.
Well, supposedly one person killed it, but I'm always trying to push Jeff, like, send a big email out. Screw this guy. If he killed it, do it again, then exclude him. You know what I mean? Like,
well, that guy I'll have nothing to do with.
I'm not going to say. You don't need him. I'm not going to say this particular case, but I'll say in general. Right? In business or anything, the rising tide raises all boats. Right? Jeff knows that. I know that. You know that, Chris. Right? Jeff and I are not insecure. I want to go on Jeff's show. Hopefully, I'll pick up some subs for this. I want Jeff and Chris. You're welcome to call him anytime when I do a live. I don't do them a lot, but my point being is I want him on my show. I'm secure that I can get. I use him for content. He uses me for
Right.
content. Don't abuse, right? Don't abuse. And the abuse is when it's a one-way street, right? So my point
Right.
being is we could synergize and get each other subs because we're not insecure in ourselves. There are a lot of creators that don't want to share, and I'm not saying anybody in particular. I'm just saying in general don't want to share because I think they're insecure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
maybe,
mean,
but listen, RJ seems like a very nice, reasonable guy. Okay, I know he might be a little bit of friends with the other guy. Who cares? You know, RJ was in here. He made a comment or two in here earlier. Okay, you could reach out. There's a very good chance RJ would come on. You two are. There's 3. FBS, Jeff said, would already definitely come on. There's 4. Reach out to OC Shorts. I mean, people are here in the chat saying, "Oh, they already tried there." So what? You tried, and you had one very insecure little pudgy midget guy squash like that, hurt the whole thing. So
I have to talk about disclosures. I've had RJ on my show with great success. I was on his show. I had Jeff to do on my show.
Okay. So the point is you could get RJ. He's a very reasonable guy. Jeff seems to respect him. There's mutual respect. You respect the guy. I wasn't talking about RJ. You got him.
Well, I think
yes.
I think from my perspective and my narrative, like sitting here now, I think me, Tom, and RJ would do a great show together because let me tell you why. You have RJ who is very specific in what he does. Then you have Tom, who's very analytical about what he does. And then you have me, like the street goof. You know what I mean? And I think that between the 3 of us, that would be a good counterbalance. And I think RJ would definitely do it. I don't think he would say no. And I've told Tom, I says, you know, I got a $20,000 camera. We'll hook the camera up. We'll get mics. We'll do a whole show out of it. And people will love that type of stuff. It's just a matter of the 3 of us getting together.
Correct.
You know, but
there was I'm sorry to cut you off, Jeff, but there was it was a Saturday and RJ texted me. He knows we kind of have an idea where he lived. So he goes, "Hey, I'm going to be your neighbor. Let me stop by with this guy Colby. I believe he's another creator now in the fishing genre. Nice kid." And he's like, "Hey, let me stop in." So we made some pasta. We had a great meal. We had some wine. Had a great time.
Party at Tom's.
I know exactly. And they're going to criticize for that too, you know. So we had some cigars afterwards. With some Romeo Julieta's 1875, one of my favorites. Not that expensive, nothing flashy. It's a good quality cigar. So as we're having cigars, he's like, "Hey, we're having a conversation, talking shop." He's like, "Can I film it?" And he filmed an episode, and it was in our backyard, and he filmed it. I think like 10,000 views. Of course, I got ripped apart, which is fine. But my point being is, like, we like talking about this stuff, like, because let's be honest, right? Like, nobody else does. My wife is like, I don't care. Like, you know, like my friends, like my best friend is from Sicily, and he like detests the mob stuff. Like, he wants nothing to do with it. He considers them like, because he did really well for himself. He's like, they're kind of bad people and they just disinterest me. You know, not saying they're bad, just tell you what he says. I have nobody to talk to. That's why I'm here. This is like my mob therapy, you know? So it would be a cool way to get together. There's no informants, you know, together. We just get together. We just have a conversation and we keep it light and we have a cigar or maybe have a little bourbon with it and give you guys because you guys like to watch this shit. You guys probably, Chris, you probably, your significant other or your friends or your parents or your godparents, they probably don't want to hear this stuff respectfully, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely be all for a thing with you and RJ. I want nothing to do with the other one. That's all.
No, I get it, and it sucks because I you know, again, I you know what it is too, and I guess maybe and it's, I don't want to say I don't lack of caring. That might be the wrong word. I just really, and that's another thing too. When you pull back, right? When you really pull back from the space and like you just close your eyes and you come back into it,
right?
It's so crazy because there was like a group of people who got along, and then 12 weeks later, like they were morbid enemies, and that's why that's why I'm here because like I didn't get a lot of crap because you're more centered, but like I went on like Lee Cole's show. Lee asked me to come on. He was a I do like politics. I have no problem discussing politics. and we were discussing the Republican nominees, and happened to be released on the day of the debate. And it was a very good discussion. I really like James Proctor, and he had me on. I got a lot of shit for it, but I'm like, I can't keep track of like who Lee's close with.
With me, I always try to be nice and always try to give people the benefit of the doubt without sitting here like, and he did without doing any of that. It's the minute that I was done is when someone's telling me on the phone that they were doing this with this guy and they were bookmaking with this guy. And I'm like, excuse me, that guy's my best friend. Who the fuck are you? Like, are you that's when, and then there was some other stuff.
You got to remember the operative word was, and it's not, I was happy to go on Lee's show. I was on it, obviously.
Right.
He asked me to come on to discuss politics, which is
right.
I love to discuss, right? If he asked me to come on, maybe it's like I'm not a mob expert in any way, but if he asked me to come an area that I'm like maybe more knowledgeable on, maybe come on, maybe not. I'm not part of reviews, but I went on because I really enjoyed the subject matter. Maybe I'm so, and you know, in my book I talk about this. Jeff, you're about relationships. I think you give a shit about people, right? So like, if you're with them, you're with them, and you're invested, right? So if like he says something to you that's like maybe not true, and you're like, you know what, like I can't F with you because, or hang out with you, or help give you my talent and time because I don't believe in you, and I respect that wholeheartedly.
Right.
I tend to be a little more topical and more content driven. Like if I could put some good content together with you, and even though like you're half of an idiot, I still may do it anyway if that topic is good that day. Because I don't know. Maybe I'm more forgiving. I don't know. I don't know what the right word is, but my center might be a little different than yours. Nobody's wrong. It's just that our center is a little different. I should probably like you.
I think just sometimes personalities don't mesh, and that's the end of it. And but I could think of nothing more fun than you know, hooking up the lights, the mics, and everything else, and just doing one big like mob roundtable.
I could almost guarantee you right now, you could get RJ to come on, Tom, and Jeff could get Jamie to come on, and there would be 4 people right there.
Where's Jamie?
Set that up and get it going next week.
Is he on the East Coast?
Who?
Is he on, the Jake guy. Is he on the East Coast?
No, he's Midwest.
Oh, okay.
Well,
yeah, and I don't know if that would really be his sort of cup of tea either. Because what I would love to do is rather than have 3 guys in 3 different places, I'd love for all of us to be in the same room. You know,
I'll host it. I got the backyard. We got a light.
I'm down because I've got the mixers, the mics, the lights, the cameras. I got everything you could ever imagine.
I didn't know you were going to be, but okay.
No, but I think I know where you're at in Jersey anyway, and I think that's about the same distance from RJ to you to me. I
think I'm literally center. Like if a crow flew and pooped in the center, I think I'm there.
Yeah. So I mean, if you talk to RJ and he's down, you just let me know, and I'll bring my driver Chris Gorky, my hitman, with me.
I'll text you. I'll text you tomorrow, and then we can offline do a little drive of some historical haunts that are pretty cool for the Jersey stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing to it but to do it. I'm a persistent motherfucker, man. I get like when I'd get it done. I get it done.
Yeah, I mean, and the nice thing is you know, it's easily done. Like the stuff that I have is very like compact and can travel and
not that far of a ride.
You know what I would like to discuss, and this is kind of just for us, and not individuals, just more in general. Newark, New Jersey, and I'll tell you why Newark's fascinating. Newark back in the day, Newark is the 5 families were there.
Right.
Hold on, I got a second. I know you know where I'm going. The 5 families were there and were very strong. The New Jersey family was not so strong because they were out of Elizabeth, but there was a very strong crew, and even remnants to this day of the Philly guys. I believe that Newark was the only city that housed all 6 Cosa Nostra families with a slight touch of the decavs, 7 families in the country. Because you would never have that in Brooklyn. You know, there's going to be a Philly.
Oh, I think you're pretty much on the money with that.
Yeah.
100%.
So that would be fun to talk about, kind of like, and they got along. There was like literally a social club on each street in North Newark, and just to kind of encapsulate that era and chop it up a little bit would be pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Guys, I'm gonna roll, man. We're going over 2 hours here.
Yeah, no.
All right. Well, why don't we call it? And Chris, I'll talk to you in a few minutes. I'm going to kick you out. Ha ha ha. Tom, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks again, Jeff. Talk soon.
Yeah,
Ciao,
and
guys.
do me a solid. If you talk to RJ and you want to put that together, I'll bring some cohibas too.
Count me in. Now I'm never going to text. Talk soon, brother. Ciao. Ciao.
All right, buddy. See ya. All right, everybody. So that's going to be it. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Thank you to everybody who did donate. We are going to be back on, what day is it? Hold on, guys. We'll be back on this Thursday where we'll actually have a mob topic. We'll talk about organized crime. We'll do some open forum stuff. Sorry we didn't get to that tonight, but thank you all for coming in tonight. And don't forget, Thursday, 8:30 p.m., we'll have an actual mob topic and we'll have more discussions. I wanted to thank Tom La Vecchia for coming on. I wanted to thank Chris Gorky for coming on. Thank you to everybody who came on the show. We will see everybody Thursday.